About 80 years ago, there was a lovely man who created a comic book company in New York City. And little did we know that that comic book company would change the face of entertainment, supposedly forever. Hi guys, or should I say, hello true believers. Welcome to So to Speak. My name is Evan Mead.
I'm Lyle Gronecker.
And we have a special show for you tonight. I brought up Marvel Comics. We're going to talk a little bit about where they began in the form of movies, because we all know that they created comics, but they have created movies, and since comic book movies are such a popular part of our culture, and they've changed.
And since nobody reads anymore.
Yeah, would you say that, just a minor point, would you say that the comic book, the physical comic book, is dead?
I have heard a lot of stories of how, like, comic book shops aren't making, like, nearly as much income anymore, that comic book sales have decreased radically. So, yeah, I would say that Marvel's biggest basket of eggs is definitely in the cinematic universe right now.
Yeah. So, with movies and TV series and Disney Plus series being the primary mode of entertainment for these characters to be given to the world, we're going to talk about Marvel at the movies, specifically movies, today. Now, this is...
Not exclusively the MCU.
Not exclusive to the MCU, yeah, we're going way beyond. Or should we say, to infinity and beyond.
That's a Pixar reference.
But, you know, Infinity Stones, stuff like that.
Oh, to Infinity Stones and beyond.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what I'm talking about.
You turned that one around.
Now, this is
360
just
right
so you
there.
know, this is going to be part of a two-parter kind of deal. This episode tonight, we're going to focus specifically on Marvel. Next week is we're going to tackle DC. And for these episodes, we have a very special guest, a good friend of ours who we'd like to introduce to you. He is a actor, a writer, a producer, who's been around the Toronto film industry and the Canadian film industry for a long time. I'd like to introduce Michael Lake to our audience. Welcome to the show, Michael. It's great to have you here.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
So, how long have you been a Marvel fan?
I would say probably my relationship with these films and their content would probably date back to about the 2002 Tobey Maguire Spider-Man.
Yeah.
That's the real first kind of Marvel property I remember being like solidly invested in and really enjoying.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. That's also very true. I think that was my first Marvel movie in the theater as well. I think that was the first superhero movie I saw in the theater in general, the first Spider-Man.
Yeah.
One of the cool things I like about Michael is that as I've gotten to know him over the past couple of years, he has this wonderful way of recounting experiences in a cinema, because Michael, just like myself and Lyle, Michael frequents the cinema all the time, or at least did in a pre-COVID world. And you've had some amazing stories of like just experiences you've had at the cinema, and a lot of the most memorable movie experiences that we've had as moviegoers, I find, not just like us three exclusively, but like just as a society, you know, a lot of the most memorable movie-going experiences of the past 20 years were with comic book movies. And something we'd like to just stress here is that everyone's been talking, and by everyone I mean like the movie-going industry, audiences, filmmakers, as far up the ladder as Martin Scorsese. Everyone in film is talking about the impact that these movies have had, and everyone thinks that like Marvel has just been around for like only 10 years. We were doing some research to prepare for this episode. Marvel has been making movies for a lot longer than we've given them credit for. We act like Marvel has just dominated the box office
from the turn of the century.
Yeah, no, they have dominated the box office for a long time than we could have figured. So let's just jump right into it. I'd like to get into where it all started for Marvel at the movies. So, just by the way, I have a pop quiz for both of you. Do you know who the first Marvel hero to get turned into a feature-length film? Which Marvel hero was the first to get their comic turned into a feature-length film? Take a guess.
Ooh. Captain America?
Captain America?
What is Captain America? You both get the grand prize.
Oh, what do we win?
You win. Nice. You win credibility.
I believe I've seen those kind of old stills from that one kind of project that was more of a financial investment than a creative endeavor. Like, I know they made a movie where they just sort of had to capitalize on the fact they had the rights or something like that.
The 90s one?
Yeah. We'll get into that when we get to this decade, but the movie I'm talking about, Marvel Comics was established in 1939, the same year that World War II broke out, and in 1944, a movie called Captain America hit theaters. Now, this movie is available on YouTube. It has a runtime of 2 hours, 44 minutes, and 27 seconds. That's like... That rivals Endgame.
If you can sit through Endgame, sure. I'm sure you can sit through that.
Yeah. So, it's interesting to note that in this version of Captain America, he wasn't called Steve Rogers.
Okay.
Yeah.
What was he called?
I'm going to look that up right now.
John Smith?
No, it wasn't John Smith. Yeah, there's also another crazy name change that...
We'll talk about name changes later.
Yeah.
I'd laugh if they called him Joe Sixpack or something.
Yeah, I'm just going to look this up right now.
Okay.
Joe America.
Joe America.
Johnny Rehab.
I know this name. So this movie was released in 94, you say?
1944.
Oh, 44.
Yeah,
okay.
So in the same year that D-Day happened, they turned Captain America into a feature-length film. And the actor who played Cap was Dick Purcell, and instead of Steve Rogers, Captain America's name in this movie was Grant Gardner.
It kind of reminds me of Guy Gardner, like the Green Lantern character.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Let's try to keep the comparisons to DC to a minimum because
I thought it was an interesting comparison.
Yeah, I want to save the comparisons for tomorrow night because I just think, in my professional opinion, that Marvel has had they've had like a significant impact on the film industry, slightly more than DC has. But not to say that DC hasn't. But
were there any other serials that were made about Captain America?
Well, no, this was the feature-length film from 1944 was actually the first time that Marvel would have one of their characters made into a theatrical experience until 34 years later. And in 1978, the Doctor Strange got made into a feature film, and it was a TV movie.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
I've seen... not footage per se, but I think I've seen like stills of that.
I'm sure it's
around the
held
internet.
up incredibly well compared to the new one.
I'm looking up this still image right now. Strange looks kind of like Borat.
He looks like Ron Jeremy.
Yeah. You just made me. I just pictured Doctor Strange being played by Sacha Baron Cohen.
Dr. Sloan.
I would watch that movie.
Oh yeah, that'd be cool. It is also worth mentioning that we're not going to talk about TV series because there's just too much to cover, but in the 70s, Spider-Man got a TV series called The Amazing Spider-Man.
It's awful.
Have you seen it?
I've seen clips of it.
Yeah.
It's like the biggest demonstration of his superpower is that he can run up a flight of stairs really quickly.
Oh yeah?
But it's all sped up footage, so not nearly it's not impressive at all.
Oh wow.
So this is a live action series.
There's a live action Spider-Man series. I'm not talking about the animated show from the 60s because that's classic.
But
I actually had the distinct honor of actually meeting the guy who voiced the animated Spider-Man.
Oh yeah.
Oh nice.
Yeah, his name Paul Souls. Paul Soules.
Yeah.
Paul Soules, he voiced Spider-Man in the 1960s, but he has had a very kind of long, distinguished career. He did lots of stuff at like Stratford and stuff like that. I had, if you don't mind me telling this anecdote, I think you'll really appreciate it.
Oh, sure, go ahead.
I actually got the honor, privilege of acting opposite him, because he now stars in this Canadian TV show called My 90-Year-Old Roommate, where he plays the eponymous 90-year-old roommate. Oh. And I was cast in this very weird and kind of uncomfortable episode where I played this like guy who was like writing his obituary for him.
Oh, wow.
And we would on camera, we would kind of like riff uncomfortably about like what I would say about him if he was to die right then and there. And then off camera, he would just like tell me all these incredible stories about his life. And it was amazing. And I kind of, like, briefly, I was like, how would you feel? This is like an improvised joke, like in the show. I was like, how would you feel about the last line being, not all heroes wear capes, like Spider-Man, he doesn't wear a cape. And it was like one of those weird kind of like anti-jokes that's like kind of funny because it's so lame.
Right.
And he just like he just like kind of like scoffed his appreciation. He's like, yeah, that's fine.
Oh. That's
so yeah,
that's a super cool story.
It was really cool just to, I don't know, sit with him. He's a very distinguished theater actor and a very distinguished voice actor. Like, he's in that famous stop motion Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer cartoon as well.
Oh yeah, I've seen that.
Right, that classic.
So yeah, that was a really cool experience to kind of get to riff with Spider-Man.
That's awesome.
Like a day.
That is pretty cool.
That is great. So back to our list. Throughout the 70s, Captain America actually got a sequel to his 1944 movie. The movie was called Captain America 2: Death Too Soon. If you're wondering where was the first one, I am 90% sure that they're referring to the 1944 film. So it took them like 35 years to come out with a sequel.
Better late than never.
Yeah. In this version, Cap is called Steve Rogers, and he's played by a dude named Reb Brown.
Okay.
R-E-B Brown. So
I like how the poster says a classic Marvel film.
Yeah.
I've never heard of it.
Wow. And now we're over half a decade later, the next Marvel property that got turned into a movie was
absolute classic.
Howard the Duck.
An absolute classic of magnanimous.
Howard the Duck.
Yeah.
Proportions.
Oh my god. So we already actually discussed Howard the Duck in our very first so to speak pilot episode. We talked about Howard the Duck, and I told the story that I'll just reiterate very quickly. My dad went into this movie thinking it was going to be the next big thing and it was going to revolutionize, films. So he thought it was going to be like the Guardians of the Galaxy of his time.
Yeah.
That's insane to me. I didn't. It took me until this year to see Howard the Duck because it's on Netflix.
Same.
It is bad.
It's not very good.
I mean, it's coherent. But its tone is wonky. It's a very dark, sickly movie.
Yeah, I feel gross watching it.
Yeah.
I'm sure you probably touched on this at some point, but in case anyone's listening and they're a younger viewer or whatever, not aware of the legacy of this film, this is George Lucas working on a Marvel property, and somehow it became this movie. Like,
well, he produced
that should be the sum of every nerd's imagination, and it turned into one of the most baffling movies of all time.
Yeah,
it's weird that they started with a product like this.
Yeah. And this is like one of the first Marvel. This is one of the first Marvel IPs to be turned into a feature film.
First big budget ones. Yeah.
Now this is where it gets really interesting. We're heading into I guess you could say iconic. The next movie that came out in the 80s that was based off a Marvel property was The Incredible Hulk Returns. Now, this is to be clear, In 1977, not only was Spider-Man turned into a live-action TV show, The Incredible Hulk, featuring Lou Ferrigno as Hulk and Bill Bixby as Dr. Banner, became a classic TV show, and it took them like 11 years to make a feature film. So this show came and went, and I guess it had an appeal.
It's kind of an iconic show for its
time.
Yeah,
for sure. And so there's just a fun fact. Lou Ferrigno actually has been a part of every Hulk project right up until Avengers Infinity War.
Thor Ragnarok.
Sorry. So up until Thor Ragnarok, he had something to do with every single project with the Hulk.
Yeah, he would do the voice.
But yeah, so...
There's also another fun fact. So in the show, you know how he's typically called Bruce Banner? Well, in the show, he's called David Banner.
Why?
Well, at first, there's two reasons. One's a little bit seedier than the other, but the first was that the guy who created the show... He fucking hated comic books. He thought they were dumb. He thought they were, like, not strongly written at all.
And this is, just to be clear, not Martin Scorsese.
No.
Yeah.
Martin Scorsese wasn't around at this time. He wasn't making stuff.
I thought he was busy making Taxi Driver in the 80s.
Oh, this was the 80s?
Yeah.
The 70s.
70s is when the show came out, but the movie...
Okay. Yeah. Anyway, I'll scrap that. Anyways... Yeah, so he said, I don't want my character to have an alliterative name, because in all of Stan Lee's works, all the main characters have alliterative names. Bruce Banner, Peter Parker.
Yeah.
Reed Richards.
Yeah.
Sue Storm. So he's like, I'm going to make him David Banner. And it's like, okay, well, that's not too much to ask. Sure. Unnecessary, but sure. But then, Lou Ferrigno and Stan Lee revealed... And when they were in a CBS meeting creating the show, they said that the reason why they changed it from Bruce Banner to David Banner is that they thought Bruce was a name that sounded too gay.
They meaning the network, right?
The network, yeah. Not Stanley and Lou Ferrigno. They both thought it was a ridiculous claim. It was like, what's so gay about a name like Bruce? I don't know.
I have never met a gay man named Bruce.
There is one on Family Guy.
Oh right, yeah.
But that's besides
But that's insane. Like, progressive initiatives in the film industry took a long time to get off the ground.
Yeah, it wasn't very glamorous in the 70s. I'll say that
for sure.
Wow. Yeah. There's a lot of Hulk shows. Quite honestly,
it's
probably the most successful show that ran around that time.
And The Incredible Hulk Returns was the feature film debut of the Bill Bixby Bruce Dr. Banner. And the next year, in 1989, there was the trial of The Incredible Hulk. Now, just to be clear, I haven't seen any of these movies.
Then let's keep going.
Yeah. So there's not too much to say.
Lou Ferrigno, I don't know if either of you have seen the movie I Love You Man with Paul Rudd. It's kind of a personal favorite of mine, though.
I've yet to see it, but I still have to take you up on your recommendation.
Lou Ferrigno plays himself in the movie.
Oh yeah.
He plays like the celebrity Lou Ferrigno.
Yeah.
And there's kind of a recurring joke or like whatever throughout the movie where they just kind of call him Hulk in passing.
Oh, okay.
But obviously that movie is led by Paul Rudd. So when Avengers Endgame came out, I was probably one of the few that made this geeky connection, but I thought it was really funny that Paul Rudd went from acting opposite Hulk to literally acting opposite the Hulk.
That's really cool. I'm glad you picked that up.
It's one of those really kind of funny instances of an actor sort of foreshadowing their own career.
Yeah.
When we get to the MCU proper, I have another Paul Rudd callback that I will.
Oh, excellent. Your story reminded me of a reference in Sky High. You both have seen Sky High, right?
Nope.
Lyle, you haven't seen Sky High?
No.
I think you'd love that movie.
Is it a Marvel or DC movie?
It's not. It's nothing. Sky High.
It is nothing.
Sky High.
What a recommendation.
Sky High is. We're going off topic, but not
just keep
okay.
Going.
So
like I'll just check it out sometime.
Linda Carter, who played the Wonder Woman in the TV show, is the principal, and there's a scene where she's like, "I'm not Wonder Woman, you know."
That's a DC reference.
Yeah.
Right.
But yeah, so but yeah, so back to Marvel. To close out the 80s, we have The Punisher starring Dolph Lundgren as Frank Castle.
I feel like I need to see that. I've seen every Punisher movie except for this one.
And by the way, you want to know something funny? For those of you who don't live in Toronto, there is a subway station in our city called Castle Frank.
And the Punisher is Frank Castle.
Yeah.
I wonder if every Halloween there's just a bunch of Punisher guys just hang out at Castle Frank and take a photo of themselves. That should be a thing.
Yeah.
It's probably not, but it should be.
Yeah. So now we're changing decades. This is where shit's about to get real. And so the next movie on our roster is the third cinematic incarnation of Captain America, and Chris Evans is still nowhere to be found yet.
I know.
1990, Captain America. The only scene I have to admit, the only scene I've seen from this movie is the Psych Hitler scene.
Yeah.
Which they actually recreated in the first Avenger, oddly enough.
I know there's a scene where he steals a guy's car, and it's so awkwardly assembled that it's like, wow.
Yeah?
You said, shit gets real, Evan. I don't see much shit getting real with this one.
Okay, again, the Hulk came back with another movie called The Death of the Incredible Hulk. We're just going to keep going. There's not too much to say.
We haven't seen any of these Hulk movies.
Yeah.
So.
Well, here's this really interesting story. The 90s wasn't... Lyle, you want to talk about how the 90s was the time when movie studios started... It occurred to movie studios that, hey, we might be able to make some money off these IPs, these comic book IPs.
It wasn't so much that. It was that Marvel was going through a really bad rough patch business-wise.
Like comic sales were tanking.
They were doing pretty fucking bad, so the only way they could get any sort of
revenue,
money, any sort of income, was to sell off the movie rights to various movie studios like Fox and Sony and even Universal. So yeah, they were desperate and throwing their products around, trying to get a potential investor.
Yeah.
And it was difficult because some studios thought that some Marvel characters, like even Iron Man, were completely unfilmulable.
Yeah.
Completely, unable to...
I'm sorry, audience. I just have to laugh at that claim, given what happened today.
If it was 1991 and you're telling me, oh, I gotta make an Iron Man movie, I'd be like, ah, shit, I'll just stick with the Rocketeer.
Yeah. Well, do you know what's interesting?
What is interesting, Evan?
When they were thinking of, in the early 2000s, when they were thinking of how to adapt Iron Man to the screen, Jon Favreau thought, but didn't go through with this, he thought about setting Iron Man in the Gulf War in the early 90s, in the first Gulf War. Instead they updated it for the modern day war on terror in Afghanistan. So, but yeah, so case in point, the Fox wound up with the Fantastic Four rights, and an ambitious filmmaker tried and failed. Well, didn't necessarily fail.
Roger Corman produced this, didn't he?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, he did.
But in 1994, the Fantastic Four movie, the unofficial first Fantastic Four movie, which no one saw literally because it was never released until YouTube was invented years later.
I'm sure there were pirated bootlegs of it.
Well, that's that's what happened. A leaked bootleg wound up on the internet, and now the whole world has seen it or can see it. I personally haven't seen it.
I need to see it. I think I'm gonna have fun watching it.
Yeah.
It looks kind of cute.
Yeah.
It's like they had no money, and they went off to make a superhero movie. And I've seen some of the effect shots, and I gotta say, it's for what they had, it's kind of commendable in a way. Other effects, maybe not so much. Like when they show Johnny Storm flying around, it's just obviously a CGI render.
Yeah. That
looks horrendous.
Oh god.
But, yeah. A lot of
maybe this could be a good movie to riff to. You know.
Oh yeah, sure. It'd be fun to see.
So after the Fantastic Four, there was in 94, in 1996, there was Generation X.
Is that one of the Olsens? Looks like an Olsen.
I have never heard of this movie.
No.
And I've never heard of this Marvel property to begin with. Generation X.
Yeah. I've never heard of that either.
Do you think it's like a prequel to X-Men?
Coming
now,
up next.
Here we go.
In
the 1998.
The GOAT.
Finally, when a Marvel movie started to actually be appealing, it was Wesley Snipes as Blade. The first, before there was Black Panther, there was Blade, played by Wesley Snipes.
Yeah. Have you seen Blade, Evan?
I personally haven't. Is it? Have either of you seen Blade?
I've seen it.
Yeah.
I've seen both of them. I know there's a third.
I got to see Blade actually for the very first time on the big screen, probably about 2 years ago.
Oh wow!
And it was fun. It was like kind of cheesy.
It's pretty silly.
It was like an indication of like how far this genre has come in the 22 years since this movie came out.
Yeah.
But it did have like a watchable appeal to it, and I thought that Wesley Snipes was pretty awesome.
There's one part where the main bad guy gets slashed in half, and as his torso flies, his body just reattaches to itself in like one of the worst CGI effects I've ever seen. And Wesley Snipes literally just turns the camera and mouths off, "What the fuck?"
But this is when
it's pretty tongue in cheek. It's silly, but it's also has like a pretty good cool factor to it.
At this point,
it's pretty fun.
At this point in cinematic history, CGI still wasn't at its full potential.
Yeah, you get a lot of effects that look like something straight out of the movie.
As far as like kind of Marvel cinematic villains go, I'm sure we'll get more into that. But like Steven Dorff is actually a really good kind of compelling villain in this movie. He does a good job.
Yeah. I think this was a TV movie, but up next is Nick Fury, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D., and Nick Fury is played by David Hasselhoff.
The Hoff.
Yeah.
He looks the part of white Nick Fury.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not much to say. I haven't seen it.
I haven't seen it either, so. But. Okay, I guess now shit's getting real because we're in the 2000s.
Turn of the century, we have the X-Men.
The X-Men with Patrick Stewart. We know the cast. Hugh Jackman as Wolverine, Halle Berry as Storm, Patrick Stewart as Professor X, Ian McKellen as Magneto, and Anna Paquin as Rogue. Right?
Yeah.
Right.
And Famke Janssen as Jean Grey.
Right, yeah.
And James Marsden as a really underutilized Cyclops.
It would, this series would take interesting directions over the years. I gotta be honest, you guys probably followed this more closely than I did, but I appreciate X-Men, but I'm not a hardcore fan. And I've seen a
messy franchise.
I have seen most of the movies, at least once. So
the only one I haven't seen yet is the Wolverine.
Oh yeah, the Wolverine. Not to be confused. We'll get into that later, but yeah. So interestingly enough, this was the only Marvel property that got released in 2000. 2001, there were no Marvel movies out that year, but in 2002, Blade 2 came along, and
Guillermo del Toro made that.
Oh, he did?
Yeah, he directed it.
Yeah.
Oh, nice. And, of course, I feel like we need to really buckle our seatbelts here because cinematic history was forever changed with the next movie we're about to talk about. The first movie, like I said in the intro, this first superhero film I ever saw in the theater was Sam Raimi's Spider-Man, starring Tobey Maguire as Peter Parker / the wall crawler. Kirsten Dunst as Mary Jane, James Franco as Harry Osborn, Willem Dafoe as the Green Goblin.
I don't think we have to go through the
no, we're not going to go, but I'm just doing the first, but I'm going to recount
this was definitely our introduction to Marvel movies. This came out around my time. I would have been 7 at the time.
Well, I was 10, and I remember, for some reason, comic book heroes kind of scared me. And I was this wuss bag. Like I didn't like going to scary movies.
Well, this movie was kind of scary.
It was.
Like people get turned to skeletons. Willem Dafoe was kind of insane.
My dad. It's funny enough you say this because my dad dragged my reluctant 10-year-old ass to the movie theater to see it, and he promised me I would like it. And I'm telling him, no, I'm not going to like it. And the scene where he gets bitten and is like in his room, like pulsing on his floor, and meanwhile, Norman Osborn is turning into the Green Goblin with the performance enhancers. That scene like made my heart stop in the theater. I'm just sitting there frozen. And then years later,
back to formula.
Yeah. Years later, I discovered that Sam Raimi is a seasoned horror film director, which is why it looks and feels like a horror film at times. So, but I feel like, but
that's exactly what I was gonna say. Is that it was like he was such an established sort of genre director that he was always gonna bring such an interesting look to this movie, and like it's a gamble that like really paid off. You can see his love for his like the source material in it. Yeah. I've seen him in interviews just gush about how much he loves the character of Spider-Man, and then you can see his own kind of like style of the movies he makes infused into it, and it's really something. The end product, 2002 Spider-Man, like I said at the beginning, was the sort of my sort of catalyst into appreciating this genre of film.
Yeah. Well, not only was it a catalyst for all of us, since we're all roughly the same age, it made film history in two ways. In the first way, it was the highest grossing opening weekend of all time. No other movie came close. It would take years before another movie broke Spider-Man's opening weekend record. And then every year since 2002, Marvel, regardless of which studio it's under, there has been a Marvel property movie in theaters every year since 2002 onward. So
it's like Woody Allen over here.
Yeah. So Spider-Man really started it all. And but one last thing, he was almost played by Michael Jackson in that desperate time when Marvel was looking to sell IPs for money.
That's fucking
I've heard that, yeah.
Yeah.
I know James Cameron really wanted to do a Spider-Man movie for a while.
That would have been cool.
And do either of you watch Entourage?
You showed it to me for a bit.
Yeah. You saw the season where James Cameron
James Cameron wanted to make an Aquaman movie,
And, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. And so, after the success of Spider-Man, movie studios grabbed other Marvel characters and cranked them into theaters and onto the production floor. And in 2003, we got, shell-shocked with just Marvel movie after Marvel movie. But I don't think any of them were good. First Marvel movie from 2003 was Daredevil. I have not seen Daredevil.
I saw that when I saw that as a kid, it traumatized me. Because I thought it was going to be, light and fun like Spider-Man, but it was just grim and nasty and violent the entire way through.
I saw this movie years later, as an adult, when I had kind of come to appreciate the difference between a good movie and a tacky movie that's fun. But this movie came out in 2003, which in our timeline feels like forever ago. But anyway, it came out in 2003 after this hugely successful CGI Spider-Man, and it looks like it's from 1980. It's so much. It's so dated by today's standards that I feel like even then it would have felt.
Colin Farrell is embarrassingly bad,
and he's had some bad movies under his belt too.
Yeah, but he mumbles all of his lines, and all the way he kills people is so silly.
Yeah.
And his outfit just sucks. It's his name's Bullseye. Put a bullseye on his forehead. We're done. I want the costume.
It's also worth mentioning that I'm told that there is a director's cut that got released.
I've heard the director's cut is better.
I've heard that it actually takes a movie that is unwatchable to makes it almost good. I still need to see it.
And also, Daredevil, Ben Affleck ended up marrying his co-star.
The second Bennifer.
Yeah.
Not the first Bennifer.
He has a thing for Jennifers. I don't know what the deal is.
And we'll get to Elektra later, but so the next Michael, have you seen the director's
of 2003?
Have you seen the director's cut of Daredevil, Michael?
No. I only ever saw the theatrical or whatever version, and I only ever saw that relatively recently.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Anyways, Ang Lee's Hulk. I have heard mixed things about this.
Oh god! So I saw this the same year as Daredevil as a kid, and I'm even more put off by this movie because not only is it kind of scary looking, but just looks bad in general.
Did they go full? I'm asking as someone who hasn't seen the movie. Did they do what they did with Fantastic and just go full on body horror at times?
It does
because Hulk would lend himself to that.
It has a weird tone, man. Like it takes itself seriously. It almost feels like an art film. It feels like Ang Lee took anything that was green and put it on every frame. And then there's like cheesy ass comic book transitions. There's really weird editing choices. There's a lot of unnecessary split screen. I haven't seen it since I was young. I've only seen it once, but I remember I just hated the entire experience, and I never bothered to watch again. I swore off Hulk after I saw
this. Your point about Hulk is interesting, and I think I will have more to say about it maybe when we reach the MCU. But there's one thing I associate with this movie is Nick Nolte had this infamous mugshot in the 2000s.
Oh, yeah?
I don't know if you guys remember this, but it's this really weird photo of him where he looks, there's no other word for it, really bizarre.
Okay.
But that, look it up. It was kind of like a meme before memes were a thing. It was just this like kind of ubiquitous photo in the 2000s. It's this really funny, weird looking photo of Nick Nolte, but it was actually like, this arrest happened while he was making this movie.
Did Nick Nolte play Thunderbolt Ross in this movie?
No, he played Absorbing Man.
Oh, okay. Because I know in Hulk lore, Thunderbolt Ross does become a villain. I believe he becomes Red Hulk.
He's played by Sam Elliott, I think.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Yeah. And Nick Nolte plays Bruce Banner's dad.
Oh,
abusive dad, and he turns into Absorbing Man.
Oh, okay.
I don't know.
Just look up Nick Nolte mugshot if you ever need a look.
Yeah, he has.
Yeah.
I love the Hawaiian shirt. It's just.
We'll put that up on the screen.
Delicious.
Yeah, the Nick Nolte mugshot. Oh my god. So
carrying on. I guess.
What are the Hulk poodles I've heard so much about?
Oh, he fights a bunch of mutant dogs.
That have like gamma radiation?
Yeah, they put gamma radiation in dogs.
Wow.
There's one point where they even put a toad in the microwave because I think that's how that works or something.
Oh my god.
I don't know. It's a crummy movie.
Yeah. And then,
2003 is not all bad because
X2,
X-Men 2.
So,
X2, yeah.
Lyle, tell us about your favorite X-Men and his role in this movie, because apparently your favorite X-Men is insultingly sidelined in this trilogy. And I'm talking about the Brian's Pedo Singer trilogy.
I do notice my problem with the X-Men movies in general is that they primarily focus way too much on Wolverine, Magneto, and Charles Xavier, and the other people are kind of just there to show off like special effects and shit. And like, I don't know, like my boy Cyclops kind of just keeps getting sidelined and knocked out or killed off, and that pisses me off because like he's not. I'd never get the impression he's like the leader of the X-Men. It's like in this movie, he gets punched out. We see him like, I don't know, an hour later, and he shoots a laser beam, and then he cries because Jean dies. Spoiler alert.
Oh wait.
She always dies.
Yeah.
But anyways, but regardless, X-Men 2 is really good.
Yeah.
It's a little bit overshadowed now because of all the superhero movies that have come like now.
Yeah.
But it was pretty impressive for its time. I love that fight scene with Nightcrawler in the beginning. That was awesome. I love the raid on the X Mansion.
Oh yeah.
That was great. And there's a lot of really cool action set pieces.
Yeah.
I love how Pyro just like fries all the cops. And like the only way they can be stopped is when Rogue taps him out.
Yeah. I was talking to someone. Well, there are of course other X-Men movies, but this is now as good a time as any. But I was talking to someone, and at a certain point, I was talking to someone once when I was in Montreal working, and at a certain point, all the X-Men productions decided to sort of like migrate there. So every year or every like other year, there was always like an X-Men movie being made in Montreal.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
So he was telling me that like the Montreal kind of film industry really owes a lot to that franchise because they would always come back and always like employ a lot of local people and stuff. And he told me he was like sort of a background actor by trade, and he was saying like it was just solid, reliable work to like always have the X-Men.
Oh, that's great. Yeah,
that's nice.
I think that's pretty cool.
Delightful.
I'm not sure if that started back then or if that started with the kind of more recent wave of films, but I don't know. That's a cool little bit of Canadiana.
Yeah.
Nice.
The biggest movie that I know of that was filmed in Montreal, outside of X-Men, was The Day After Tomorrow, which isn't Marvel, but going on. Yeah. Right. Moving on. 2004 is when Marvel just keeps upping their game. There was another. This is the second film adaptation of Punisher.
Oh, Thomas Jane's Punisher.
I have not seen this Punisher.
I actually like this movie a lot.
Was it? Are we not supposed to like it? Or?
I don't know. Like it's not great, but I like it regardless. It's a guilty pleasure of mine. John Travolta is such a batshit crazy villain that you just don't buy for a second. But I actually really like Thomas Jane as Punisher. Like there's parts where he's like kind of like he has a sick humor about him. There's one time where he has like a blowtorch and he has a guy like tied upside down. It's like this thing burns at 4,000 degrees. By the time it touches your skin, your skin will feel ice cold. The guy's like, I don't know anything. And he takes a popsicle and he pokes him in the back. He's like, ah!
Yeah.
And then he just like puts the popsicle in his mouth and says, like, you are not a nice man.
Wow.
There's a lot of like weird scenes here and there. I just kind of like its odd like sensibilities. But yeah, I personally like it.
Yeah, it's not great. I've never seen this movie either, but I remember as a kid, 2004. So yeah, as like a kid, young teen or whatever. Like, I remember John Travolta being played up like a lot in the advertising.
Oh yeah.
And I was more aware of who John Travolta was, and
right.
So for years in my head, I thought that he was like the Punisher, and then. And then, like, I still have not seen the movie, so I don't know why I ever made this connection.
Vincent Vega, the Punisher.
And then I found out, like, oh, he's not the main character.
Well, at this point in John Travolta's film career, he was actually looking for a comeback, and I guess the studio wanted to push him into the advertising and out there.
I think he could I think he tried to take anything he could get.
Yeah.
By the early
well, like at this point, the 2000s were kind of a low point for him.
Pretty much, yeah.
But yeah, so moving on, there's Blade Trinity, the third and I don't know, we'll get to that. The third and final Blade movie, Blade Trinity. It's got Wesley Snipes back again, and it's got I see Ryan Reynolds in the. So this isn't Deadpool.
No, he's playing a vampire hunter.
Yeah.
There's one.
It's not too.
Yeah. Sorry, continue.
It's not too dissimilar from who Deadpool would become, because he's this kind of cocky guy. He's got these like katana blade thingies, and he's always mouthing off at people.
There's this one scene where he gets abducted by vampires, and it's like, guys, I hate to warn you, but I just farted and I ate a shitload of garlic today. Silent but deadly.
If you ever want a good laugh, you have to look up. I can send it to you later, or whatever. But there's this hilarious interview that Patton Oswalt did about his experience working on this movie. Because I believe he's in a couple scenes as like some computer guy, and he tells the hilarious story of just Wesley Snipes and the director never getting along.
I have heard that.
It is. I mean, he's great. He's amazing. I'm sure he'll tell this story 1,000 times better. But he tells this really hilarious story of just how difficult it became to work on that set because nobody would like budge an inch for the other. It's a really funny story.
So it seems that like actors would start. This is like the third time that I know of where an actor has been in a Marvel movie and gotten a part in another Marvel movie as a completely different character, and it's a bigger performance. Like, first it was Ryan Reynolds in Blade Trinity, and then he became Deadpool. Then Chris Evans was the Human Torch, and then he became Cap. And then Michael B. Jordan was also the Human Torch, and then he became Killmonger. So I think, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
So the other monster entry of 2004 was Spider-Man 2. And Spider-Man 2 is debatably the greatest superhero one of the greatest superhero movies ever made. It gets this reputation as one of, if not the best Spider-Man movie of all time. And fun fact, Tobey Maguire almost didn't come back for this movie. He was almost replaced by Jake Gyllenhaal.
Yeah.
We'll get into why that's funny later on.
I don't know, like when you see him in October Sky, I can actually see him as a Peter Parker like character.
So can I, yeah. Well, because
a young Jake Gyllenhaal.
Well, Tobey Maguire had his fun with period pieces in Seabiscuit, and that's actually where his back injury came to be.
Yeah, I was gonna say. Yeah. That would have been a shame if another role had sidelined him from doing that. But one thing I find fascinating about Spider-Man 2 is we all watched it together recently over the summer.
Yeah, we did.
Alfred Molina as Otto Octavius is so good in that movie. Like, he does that creepy kind of Gollum thing where he talks to himself, and that scene is like 15, 16 years on. That scene is like totally chilling. That one scene where the arms kind of come to life is paying great homage to like Sam Raimi's earlier films. Like he's really laying on the horror influence there, and I just like he's so much fun in that movie. I don't know. It's really a lot of fun to watch.
Oh no, sure. It's actually it's a great movie. Fun fact: it was a big hit, but it wasn't quite as financially successful as the first Spider-Man.
Ooh.
Right.
But critically, it surpasses the first Spider-Man.
I would rewatch it 5 times over just so it gets something.
Yeah, I mean, I could wax poetic about that film a lot.
Yeah.
I do think Spider-Man 2 is one of the greatest superhero movies. But even just the opening credits are such a fun, unique approach to like having to do opening credits. The fact that they just recreate the first film in this sort of like still almost this weird kind of like vibrant kind of slideshow of just like events of the previous film. It's a really cool way to like immediately get us back into that.
I don't feel like we're wearing like rose tinted glasses either. I think Spider-Man 2 does hold up. So.
Yeah, no, like if I can rewatch it like 16 years later and have it be this good, and it's the kind of movie that like I will watch it if I'm ever like in a funk or a low point in my life, because Peter Parker spends 90% of that movie in a low point. I will watch it to relate to Peter, but then at the end, it leaves you with a very nice reminder that everything does get better.
It's pretty empowering.
It really is.
As soon as he gets his vision back after MJ gets captured, it's like, let's go kick some ass.
Yeah. I want that wall-crawling arachnid prosecuted right after I pay Peter Parker to give me pictures of that guy.
Mr. Brent, give me a violin.
So, I'm sorry to kill the tension here, but Marvel has a way of doing that with its release pattern. In 2005, Jennifer Garner played Elektra.
Again.
I have to be honest, I have only seen this movie... I've seen the climax of this movie on TV when I was younger, and I thought Uwe Boll directed it. That's how silly it looked. I thought Uwe Boll directed it.
But don't you know, Evan, Uwe Boll is better than Michael Bay.
Oh yeah, that's right, and he'll box Michael Bay to prove that.
He has said it himself.
Right, yeah. He said it on a video too, so it must be true.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, so what else? What can we say about Elektra? Like,
I haven't seen it.
Yeah.
So
I haven't seen it either.
Yeah.
So not too much contributing.
Yeah, but yeah, Marvel did not have a good year in 2005, and the next movie I want to talk about is a movie that I actually did enjoy the first time I saw it. The first rendition, technically, the first one that was public, at least, rendition of the Fantastic Four. They actually successfully made a movie this time. The cast, the four are played by Johan Gruffard. Did I say his name correctly?
Johan Gruffard, yeah.
Johan Gruffard, Jessica Alba, who was unknown at the... I think that this movie and Into the Blue, which came out, that Paul Walker movie, Into the Blue.
Star,
yeah, no, that came out the same summer, and that movie propelled her. These two movies propelled her to the status of superstar. Then there was Michael Chiklis as the Thing, and of course, our boy Chris as Johnny Storm, the first Johnny Storm. I have to be honest. It has some fun scenes. I liked the climax a little bit. Dr. Doom I thought was a passable villain.
I thought he was lame.
Well, the way they talk to him, like, they're all scientists, But the boring part, it takes forever for things to happen in this movie because
it is very, very uneventful. There's only like 2 action scenes.
Yeah, they spend 80% of it in a lab, like figuring out
they're trying to get rid of their superpowers.
Yeah, and
Johnny's the only one having fun.
I really felt for the Thing this time.
Yeah, you feel for Ben. Michael Chiklis is really good as the Thing.
Yeah,
he's the first person I think of whenever I think of the Thing now.
Yeah.
I know some people complain about his outfit, but given like the times, I'm actually like it would have been way worse if he was CG.
Yeah.
So I commend
Josh Trank.
I commend him for his dedication to his craft, for putting himself in that suit day after day.
Wow. Yeah, and that's cool because you just remember that suit's practical. Like he's wearing that.
Yeah.
Wow. And it's rare you see like that much detail. Like,
Yeah.
What is this on our list? What is Man Thing? I've never heard of it.
Is that a Wes Craven movie?
What is Man Thing?
Man Thing.
It's just on
heart sing.
It's just on this list, and I have no clue why.
Bang bang.
Man Thing.
You make everything slimy.
Yeah.
Man Thing.
Okay.
2005 movie. Yeah, I got no memory of that.
Okay, no, it wasn't a Wes Craven movie.
So, yeah.
Okay. I have no idea what this is. It looks like it came out in the really early 90s. Just from this cover alone.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
Sci-fi channel movie.
It grossed $1 million against a $30 million budget.
That's not good.
That's kind of sad. Yeah.
And this is a Marvel property?
I guess so, yeah.
I have never heard of this.
Whatever. Moving
on. There's kind of a light at the end of the tunnel because the next movie on our list is Oh wait, no, this is when Brett Ratner came in and derailed.
You lied to me. You said there'd be a light at the end of the tunnel.
The light's delayed a little bit. Sorry,
but there was none. And now we have X-Men: The Last Stand in 2006.
This is like the Spider-Man 3 of the X trilogy.
This is one of my least favorite superhero movies of all time.
Well, I gotta be honest. I watched it like in the context of just a movie alone. As a movie alone, it's not the worst thing ever. But I get it as an X-Men movie. If you watch it in conjunction with the trilogy. It derails what could have been a really interesting trilogy.
Maybe I'm biased because of the first 10 minutes.
Right, because your boy Scott.
Yeah, gets killed off unceremoniously off screen.
Yeah.
But yeah, even still, like, this movie's a mess. Magneto's, like, turned from a complex character to a complete Saturday cartoon villain.
Speaking of which,
a lot of characters unnecessarily die.
My favorite
just to be brought back again, like a few movies later.
My favorite line in that whole movie is, "Don't you know who I am? I'm the Juggernaut, bitch."
Vinnie Jones he's having a ball.
Oh my god.
I like. Wait, no, I don't like anything. Moving on.
Yeah.
Michael, do you have anything to say about X-Men: Last Stand?
X-Men Last Stand, there's not much I can say about it that hasn't already been said. San Francisco Bridge is kind of cool. But weirdly enough, I literally never saw this movie until, I kid you not, this calendar year.
Oh, yeah?
When it appeared on Disney Plus, I was watching a few things. And I don't know. It just occurred to me to watch it. I'd heard not great things about it for years, and then I watched it, and I kind of just shrugged it off.
Yeah. So there was one. 2006 only had one Marvel movie. 2007 had 3. The first one was Ghost Rider with Nicolas Cage.
The Cage.
And Sam Elliott was in this movie too.
He was in this one as well.
Yeah.
And Eva Mendes.
Gorgeous Eva Mendes.
And the kid from American Beauty.
Oh, he was there?
Yeah.
Wow.
What's his name?
Wes
Bentley.
Wes Bentley.
Yeah, Wes Bentley.
Man, to be honest, this movie has really bad pacing. It's so slow. Just like the Fantastic Four. Why do all these movies... I'm starting to notice a pattern here.
Well, because they didn't have
unless the movie is X-Men or Spider-Man, the pacing sucks and it's not interesting. Like, why is it that Spider-Man and the X-Men are the only, like, filmable Marvel properties at this point in history?
Well, because
I think it's kind of a byproduct of that. I think that because X-Men and Spider-Man had such big success, I think everyone jumped on the bandwagon and they really wanted to make a movie, regardless of quality. Yeah. So those two kind of set the framework, but I feel like there are a lot of movies from that era that just tried to repeat their success.
I feel like they're trying to make the characters look cool, and they're trying to avoid like the nerdy like stigma of these characters. Because Fantastic Four has like product placement out the wazoo. They don't really care about the science so much. It's more like, oh, Johnny Storm's a cool one, so we'll focus more on him.
Like, I remember my brother wanted to go see Fantastic Four in the theater just because that one shot in the trailer.
The dirt bike scene,
in the trailer,
following the amazing feat of Ghost Rider.
Well, one last thing.
I will say, Nick Cage is having the time of his life.
It's Nicolas Cage being Nicolas Cage, so if you want that, that's all you're getting out of Ghost Rider.
That's the best part of Ghost Rider, too.
Yeah.
So after that...
Sam Raimi, after 3 years, he tapped off the Spider-Man trilogy with Spider-Man 3. And I like to think of Spider-Man, the Raimi Spider-Man trilogy, as the Godfather movies of the superhero genre because they are held in such high esteem. The first two are regarded as masterpieces, and the third one is trashed beyond belief.
I like Spider-Man 3.
I don't hate it. Like, I like it too.
It has some bad qualities, but overall, I don't mind it. When I was a kid, the final fight scene with everyone just kind of blew my balls away.
Really... I saw that at a birthday party, and we went nuts.
It was amazing, to be honest.
That scene alone, I thought, was worth the price of admission.
And then I went on the internet, and everybody complained about it, and completely soured my experience.
Yeah. Well, James Rolfe actually... James Rolfe gave probably the best review I've ever seen for this movie. Like, it's a fun time. People like to complain. Don't let that get you down. Like, when you're trying to enjoy yourself.
That's true.
In a movie.
An interesting parallel is what Spider-Man 3 and Godfather 3 have in common is they're both sequels to sequels that people say exceeded the original film.
Yes, that's also true.
So when your trajectory of like your trilogy is like, oh, this is getting, this is good, the next one's even better, like you can really only set yourself up for disappointment with that third film.
You can only go so far, you're right.
Well, I feel like also if Sam Raimi had complete control creatively over this film...
Didn't he write the film?
He did, but studio interference is what caused... The villain problem was caused by studio interference. He had to do something about Harry with Peter's rivalry. If he had his way, Sandman would have been the only villain. The studio wanted Venom because...
Oh, Venom.
No, the studio wanted... Venom, and I remember being at summer camp in Spider-Man 2, when Spider-Man 2 came out, the summer of 2004, and I remember one kid saying, Venom is going to be in the third movie, I just know it. I'm like, okay. And then, what the hell do you know? 3 years later, Venom was in the third movie. His version, Topher Grace's version of Venom, does Venom no justice at all.
No.
Because Topher Grace is scrawny and short. And Eddie Brock is supposed to be...
He's nerdy. He was trying to shed his good boy image from that 70s show.
Yeah.
He did that with a few other roles, too, like in Predators, but it's like...
And then he went way too far in that Spike Lee joint.
No, he was good in that, though.
Black Klansman. I'm talking about, like, the evil, like, the depth of evil that he, like, sunk to.
Yeah, he was really good in that movie, though.
He was amazing.
Yeah. He's not very good in Spider-Man 3, but he's just totally miscast, and I feel bad, because it really hurt his career after that.
The only line in this movie that I hate with a passion in Spider-Man 3 is, I like being bad. It makes me happy.
Never wound what you can't kill.
That was a good line. I like that line. And then it was immediately followed up by a schlocky line. And what's really sad is Topher Grace, in fact, being bad does not make Topher Grace happy because he needed therapy after playing David Duke in Black Klansman.
Okay, but we're not talking about Black Klansman.
Yeah, so moving on to the last Marvel entry of 2007. I'm losing track of the years. In 2007, there was Fantastic Four, Rise of the Silver Surfer. I have to be honest... I saw this in the theater with a friend, and we had a good time. I thought it was way more fun than the first movie. Things in this movie, things happen, but that's really all you can say about it. It's like G.I. Joe. Like, the second G.I. Joe is better than the first G.I. Joe, but not by much.
Yeah, I loved the Silver Surfer. I thought he was good.
He was the best part of the movie.
He was played physically by Doug Jones, who was also the creature from The Shape of Water, as well as Pan's Labyrinth. He's done a lot of work. And he was voiced by Lawrence Fishburne.
Oh yeah, Lawrence Fishburne gave a great voice in that movie.
They totally fucked up Galactus though.
Yeah.
And Galactus is I like Galactus even more than Thanos.
Well, I
hope he comes up in the MCU and they do a much better job with him.
Oh yeah. So, not too much to say. It was fun popcorn movie, nothing special. Now at this point in cinematic history, there's like a couple of Marvel movies, regardless of the studio, each year.
They're just kind of batting 1,000 right now because they're not doing so well.
Hey, not doing so well, huh? Well, what we're about to talk about next changed everything. In 2008,
there we go.
A recovering drug addict was given a job by this bit of a he's an interesting filmmaker. I like Jon Favreau. Jon Favreau gave Robert Downey Jr. a job, and the rest is history. I feel like we could just stop the podcast there because we all know what happens next. But let's talk about it.
Well, they want to know.
Yeah. I went into Iron Man disenfranchised. I'm going to be completely honest, because every other Marvel property I had dipped my toes into outside of Spider-Man or X-Men had disappointed me beyond belief. I was bored out of my skull with the Fantastic Four. Ghost Rider annoyed me, and I had no hope for Iron Man. I thought it was gonna just, be fun the first time, and then that was it. I saw this with my friend, and I was remembering it when I went to school, like that the weekend after I saw it, because I saw it opening night, and the theater wasn't super busy that I remember. I went to Lyle, I've taken you to the Elgin Cinema up in Richmond Hill. Yeah, that's one of the movies I've seen a lot of classics at. But anyway, so it wasn't crowded, and then I liked it so much that when I saw it with my friend, I went to go see it a second time with my dad, and my dad and I had some long, philosophical discussions about, how Tony Stark and his relationship to war and how he's attached to the suit. That was great. So it was a fun movie that stayed with a lot of people. The character grew on everyone, as we know. But this was history in the making, and we didn't even know it yet. So also...
That's exactly what I was going to say. We didn't know it yet. I don't think they even kind of really knew the extent yet. But regardless of what follows this whole, 23 movie universe, the first Iron Man movie is such a fun movie. And it's such a solid superhero, character-driven kind of movie. It stands up tremendously well.
It's pretty good, yeah.
Yeah. And Tony Stark was able to build this in a cave!
With a box of scraps!
Yeah, and Jeff Bridges pulls off a fantastic performance in that.
Yeah. I don't mind him as a villain, actually. I remember when I saw it with my parents, my mom was like, yeah, it's Jeff Bridges. I'm like, who? Big Lebowski. Who?
Yeah.
He usually has hair. He didn't have hair in this movie, but he normally has hair.
Lyle, you didn't know this until I told you, but do you know that Jeff Bridges has a twin brother named Beau Bridges? No. They did a movie together called The Fabulous Baker Boys.
Okay. I don't think they're twins, but I am aware that he has a brother.
Oh yeah, no, he has a brother named Beau.
Okay.
But yeah.
Beau Bridges is a pretty solid. Yeah. Yeah, he's a solid character actor in his own right.
So
he works on a lot of stuff.
Now.
And their father is a Hollywood legend too.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
Lloyd Bridges, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was in Airplane.
Yeah. Now, the next Marvel property of 2008 that would follow.
Shit.
It's not great. Why is the Hulk cursed with
Because they just make him a beast.
Well,
they make him an angry brute, and the only thing Bruce Banner does is he has to avoid not getting angry, and that's the only thing that drives his character is he either wants to get rid of the Hulk or he has to control his anger.
Now
they don't do anything much deeper than that. and all his fights are basically just bam, bam, bam. It's not much else.
Yeah.
He's not really a good leading character, I think.
Michael, why don't we ask you, how do you feel this actor who plays him in this version, Edward Norton, how does he compare to what we would later know as the Hulk full time?
Edward Norton is a really good actor in his own right,
is.
But I am really happy that he was succeeded by Mark Ruffalo.
Yeah.
I did see this Incredible Hulk movie pretty recently, like within the kind of last couple of months of lockdown, and it just, I don't know, it didn't really do anything for me. Bruce is not that interesting in this movie.
He's kind of neurotic the entire time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The only funny scene... Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
There's the one joke... it's okay. There's that one, like, kind of awkward joke where he's holding up, like, the purple pants. And,
right, yeah.
It's like the sort of fun, self-aware joke that Marvel would, like, become really excellent at pulling off. But in that instance of it, it's pulled off so poorly. It's just, like, kind of one of those, like... wah wah, like sad foghorn jokes, and to me that's just like everything wrong with this movie.
I was gonna say it's
trying to be fun and it just has nothing going for it.
The only funny scene in the whole movie is when it's like, oh, do you want to take a subway in New York? It's like, you really want to put me in a giant tube underground? Not a good idea. Okay, let's take a cab.
And then the cabbie is like
zooming around New York, yelling and screaming. Yeah. Liv Tyler's like, you asshole! And then Banner's like, you should really learn how to control your anger. I can give you meditation tips and breathing exercises.
This movie does have. I would be remiss if I didn't mention this. However, as much as this movie doesn't interest me, this movie does have the distinction of filming scenes in Toronto.
Yep.
Yeah, Street.
One of the most iconic pizza places that was in our city. We talked about this in the pizza episode from last week. The Big Slice is very visible in the shot.
So is the strip club Zanzibar.
Ah, yes.
I knew you were going to say that.
Yeah, he knows.
Yeah, the Big Slice, that's a Toronto staple. Yeah. My parents met at Ryerson and they used to go there.
Oh, that's
sweet.
How sweet.
That's
but yeah, the inclusion of Zanzibar is definitely one of those funny kind of Toronto Easter egg.
Yeah. Not much else to say about Incredible Hulk, regrettably.
It is. If you've got a puzzle, this is like that piece that you swear doesn't fit, but still does.
You could technically skip Incredible Hulk.
You would, but here's the thing: they weren't very. It's not as interconnected as the other Phase 1 movies because the reality was Universal still had the rights to the Hulk, and they didn't understand the potential they were sitting on for the cinematic universe. So the Hulk came and went, and that's really all I can say. The next entry from 2008 is Punisher Warzone. I've never seen this.
I have sat through this movie. It is insane.
Yeah.
Ray Stevenson is like the Punisher is just this he's like this emotionless machine that just grinds through people like meat. Yeah. There's one fucking scene where there's these parkour kids that are just jumping between rooftops. And I don't know why he did this, but Punisher just grabs a rocket launcher, shoots one of the parkour members midair, and it just blows up into pieces. And everyone's like, holy fucking moly. Wayne Knight plays like his tech wizard guy.
Of
who,
course.
Like, gives him like computer advice and shit.
Oh wow.
It's like, wow, this is like the last thing I saw Wayne Knight in.
Is he like his character in Space Jam? Where he's like this dweeby assistant?
Kinda not as extremely over the top though.
Yeah.
It is. It holds the distinction, I think, of being the first Marvel movie directed by a woman.
Oh.
Yeah. Go figure. But yeah, Punisher Warzone is pretty silly, but it's fun in its own right. Yeah. Very mature. It was part of a new Marvel campaign of Marvel Knights.
Yeah.
It was a production banner that came out, and they were going to make other stuff. I think they were going to make another Daredevil movie, but it just never came into fruition.
Do you think that's
Oh, wait, no. Ghost Rider Spirit of Vengeance was also part of the banner. But yeah.
So there was a whole other cinematic universe like going on.
They wanted to set something up, but it just didn't fall. It fell through.
Well, do you think maybe that's how the Netflix shows came to be later on? We're not going to talk about those.
I think what they wanted to do was very similar to what the Netflix shows ended up being.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That would become a sort of hilarious, ironic trend in the decade to follow.
Yeah.
Marvel was so successful with their cinematic universe that everything just had to be cinematic universe.
It started a trend, for better or worse. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
But nobody does it better. Alright, so
anyway,
after Warzone, there was another disaster waiting to happen.
Well, this was dead on arrival because a bootleg version of this movie leaked to the public, and it killed a lot of people's hype. X-Men Origins Wolverine.
Yeah.
Is what we're talking about.
Yeah.
I have not seen this movie, but I've heard.
I've seen it.
This was the introduction to Deadpool, and apparently it was a disgrace.
It's really fucking bad.
Yeah.
He doesn't wear the outfit. He doesn't break the fourth wall. He's in it for about, I'd say, no more than 10 minutes.
Isn't he like a quippy fuckhead, and they staple his mouth shut?
He starts off very quippy. Like, Ryan Reynolds embodies the character well enough for what he's given.
Yeah.
It's not a perfect rendition of Deadpool, but it's good enough.
Yeah.
For what they were going for. But yeah, then he just disappears throughout most of the movie. And it's like, oh, he died. And then he shows up at the end, and he's all stitched up, and he's like a giant mutant freak, and he just looks like shit.
So was Marvel gonna do origin movies for their other heroes?
They wanted to make a Magneto movie, but that got shelved.
Well, technically, that came to be like 2 years later, but we'll get into that.
Yeah, but the solo Magneto movie, and then they also wanted to do a Gambit movie with Channing Tatum, which also didn't come through.
Now, now the year is 2010. The MCU took a break for 2009, but every year since 2010, the MCU has had one entry in theaters at least. Iron Man 2 came about in 2010. I remember being super excited to see this, and then I went to the theater with my friend. My hype was dead after 20 minutes. The pacing is awful. It is fun to watch Tony Stark do things. And the last
kind of an asshole in this movie, though.
Well, he's dying.
Yeah. Kind of, and then he fixes it in one scene.
No, in Iron Man 3, the whole conflict could have been resolved because in the Iron Man 3, he has surgery to take the arc reactor out of his chest. I'm like, couldn't you have just done that? And his suit doesn't need the arc reactor in his chest to power itself. Like, the suit is self-sustaining with its power. And I was thinking this when I see War Machine come in, and his introduction was okay. I truly underestimated how integral of a role he would play in the MCU. And speaking of actor change, we forgot to mention this when we talked about Iron Man, but Terrence Howard was replaced as Rhodey because Terrence Howard was being Terrence Howard. He wanted more money. More
money than Robert Downey Jr. even.
That's kind of funny. Yeah. That's funny to think about when you look back on it.
Next time, baby. Nope.
I actually thought to myself, Michael, did you ever get to a moment where you see Incredible Hulk or Rhodey in the first Iron Man and you wonder don't you just wish that for consistency's sake they were played by Mark Ruffalo and Don Cheadle from the get-go? Because Don Cheadle, we've seen him more as Rhodey in the other movies.
We have seen him a lot.
Yeah. And I think no disrespect to Terrence Howard, but I do think Don Cheadle's a better actor. Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway,
I personally dislike Iron Man too.
I like how they this is kind of an example of a sort of meta sort of joke that Marvel pulls off really well, but Iron Man 2 does have a pretty funny instance of Don Cheadle entering as an established character, but clearly a different actor. And then Robert Downey Jr. says to him, I wasn't expecting to see you, or something along those lines. And Don Cheadle, just in one line, he swiftly addresses and resolves the recasting just by saying, well, it's me. I'm here. Deal with it.
And that was great.
I always thought I always thought that was a really funny kind of like.
You know what? Also, you know what other joke is meta by today's standards? There's a scene where he's in Monaco and he's talking to people in this continuous shot, and one of the people he talks to is Elon Musk.
That's right. He is in that movie. I forgot about that.
Elon Musk had a cameo in Iron Man 2.
So did Olivia Munn.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Well.
And Kate Mara.
Oh my God!
There's a lot of fucking people who.
Kate Mara, yeah, she's the agent who summons him to the Senate committee.
Yeah. Do you think Sam Rockwell will ever return and be like, "I'm gonna get my revenge on you"? Or is he just stuck in prison for the rest of time?
Yeah, you never see him again.
He never comes back. No.
I think
what a missed opportunity.
Well, I thought he was like all over the place as a character.
I love Sam Rockwell, but that was the first thing I ever saw him in, and it wasn't a good impression.
Oh, that was the first thing you ever saw Sam Rockwell in?
Yeah.
You poor soul.
Sam Rockwell. I've had this conversation with people before, but Sam Rockwell is like one of those actors where, regardless of the quality of what he is in, he is usually the best part of it. Like almost always. He doesn't. He will elevate the project, and I will watch him in anything.
I can't say the same about Mickey Rourke. No, Mickey Rourke. Mickey Rourke. It feels like Mickey Rourke hated making this movie because he did an interview with Seth Meyers and he looked annoyed the whole time.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't give a shit about this.
No, and this was like right after his comeback.
With The Wrestler, yeah.
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 If you want to go to a Mickey Rourke movie, go watch Spun.
Oh.
He is amazing.
But yeah, 90% of everything he says in Iron Man 2 is in the trailers. It's so disappointing. Yeah. And that stupid joke about his bird. I want my bird.
Bird.
Yeah. But apparently he was supposed to... This movie suffered from studio interference because apparently Whiplash was supposed to have a bigger, like, character in the movie, and they just cut out, like, a ton of his stuff, and Mickey Rourke also wasn't happy about that.
I would probably say the best aspect of Iron Man 2 would be Black Widow.
Yeah, and she's barely a character, but, you know, she's nice. It's nice to see her, and
yeah, it is nice to see her.
We truly underestimated, just like Rhodey, we truly underestimated like how integral she would be to this story, this continuous series of films.
Yeah.
So moving on to
Go ahead.
And we completely forgot to mention that this is where post-credit scene mania started with the first Iron Man, because a huge actor plays Nick Fury in a 30-second scene that gets everyone pumped.
He's the badass motherfucker.
Yeah.
Samuel Jackson.
Right. I actually literally I was doing some research before we spoke tonight, but I was kind of reading about how that cameo came to be, and Marvel was like, they so badly wanted to commit that cameo to secrecy that they didn't even let Samuel Jackson walk onto the set. Like, they physically drove him to the set so he would kind of not be spotted on the set.
Oh, wow.
And they were like they wanted to keep it so secret. I'll admit, when I saw Iron Man in theaters in 2008, I didn't even know about that scene because post-credit mania wasn't a thing yet.
Yeah.
So it wasn't until the home release or whatever that I actually saw it. But they were like so adamant that they had like pulled off this like little kind of heist, getting Samuel Jackson to appear in this movie, and then on Monday it was like online, like people had found out that he had filmed a scene for the movie.
Wow. And that's great. Also, my stepdad would actually have a habit of staying till the end of the credits in anything he watched in the theater, like even before Marvel Mania.
Yeah.
But then he told me, Evan, there's a scene. He saw Iron Man with his buddy Gord, and my stepdad came home and he's like, Evan, did you stay till the end of the credits? I'm like, what? No. And he's like, oh, Samuel Jackson's there. I'm like, oh, okay. But Samuel Jackson also has a small role in Iron Man 2, and there's really not much more we can say about it. I wouldn't skip it, but it's one of the weaker entries of the MCU. 2011, things would sort of pick up. Thor, Lyle, you have some things to say about the Kenneth Branagh Thor movie.
Yeah, it's an ugly movie.
And I didn't even...
If you thought Battlefield Earth overused the Dutch angle, watch Thor and just say, wow, this trend needs to die.
But why Dutch angles? I don't get that.
Because it makes things look weird.
Do you know what would have worked? The Dutch angles are mainly in scenes with Loki, and the whole idea is that like Loki's slanting the whole image of Asgard, because Loki.
I was gonna say, you guys. I know we're all film guys, but some listeners might have wanted clarity on what a Dutch angle is.
A Dutch angle is when you tilt a camera. Like, let's say your camera is like completely stable, completely leveled, and you tilt it 45 degrees so the image looks diagonal. And it's a bit of an off-kilter look.
Yeah.
It's very
prevalent. Once you're aware of that, you'll never stop seeing it.
Yeah.
So.
It can be used effectively, but more often than not, it's kind of a cheap way to make things look weird.
Yeah. Well, anyways, this movie was actually the first like big breakout lead role for Chris Hemsworth, because up until this point in movie history, the only thing he was known for was that small scene in the Star Trek reboot from 2009 where he's George Kirk, Kirk's father, in the intro.
Sure.
And that was a great role for him. I really liked that. But he's under...
This was leaked relatively recently, like maybe a year or two ago, but I remember seeing this, I guess not even leaked, it was just like a Deadline Hollywood article or something like that, but from back in like 2009, 2010, when they were prepping the Thor movie, it was this article about like people they were considering, like people that were kind of shortlisted.
Yeah.
And the two like standout names were Shia LaBeouf and Josh Hartnett.
Josh Hartnett I can see, but not Shia LaBeouf. Oh my god.
Like, it's just funny because those two guys would have been way better known than Chris Hemsworth.
Well,
and now Chris Hemsworth is synonymous with the role of Thor, and he became a huge star in his own right.
Yeah.
It's just kind of funny how much it can change for you.
Exactly. And we saw some other change later that summer with Chris Evans in... But first, before I want to talk about him, the movie that came out, Thor came out in May. I actually remember Thor came out the weekend before my high school prom, and I was so busy with like projects and prom preparation and stuff that I just forgot about it and I skipped it. But I saw it later that summer. The movie I did see was X-Men First Class before high school was over, and this is actually my favorite X-Men out of all of them. Like, I really had fun in the theater watching this. I thought it was a very fun ride. X-Men First Class is first class in my opinion.
So X-Men First Class was directed by Matthew Vaughn, right?
Matthew Vaughn.
Yeah.
So this is not a Marvel movie, but I really adore the movie Kick-Ass.
Me too.
Yeah.
So I always appreciate it when a director can do something kind of remarkable and a movie that stands out, and then they kind of get that next opportunity. And I think that's really what happened there. Like he proved himself with that Kick-Ass movie, and X-Men First Class was like a really solid entry into the franchise.
Yeah. So yeah, it was a cool movie. I had fun with it. Next on our list is Captain America: The First Avenger. At this point in history, this is the fourth cinematic incarnation of Captain America, and they got him right.
Yep.
Yeah. Red Skull looks incredible. The movie feels very much like there's a very steampunk movie feel to this movie. It's one of those MCU movies that I don't think about too often, but whenever I revisit it, it's so enjoyable. And there's
a lot of heart to it. It's pretty solidly put together.
And if you look, and it establishes the life and the world that Steve Rogers as a character comes from, and how much he wants it back when you watch him in like the later movies.
Yeah.
And what's cool about this movie is it's grounded in like history.
Yes.
So yes, it does have some kind of superhero tropes of blue glowing things or whatever, but it's all grounded in the Second World War. So there's like some pretty brutal kind of raw action in there.
The closing credits of this movie are all real World War II American propaganda posters for the war propaganda posters, and they're like tailored like with like the Captain America image. It's really cool. Yeah. So the big one, all these movies we're talking about, Iron Man 2, Thor, Incredible Hulk, and Captain America, they were building up to a landmark piece of entertainment. The movie they were building up to was
Ghost Rider Spirit of Vengeance.
God damn it, I forgot that movie came out before what I wanted to talk about. So
I haven't seen this one.
All I know about this, there's a bit in a TV spot where he pees fire.
Yeah, it's directed by the guys who made Crank, Neville Dean Taylor.
Oh wow.
It's fucking awesome.
I didn't see this.
Like I haven't seen this, but like I can tell they put their like kinetic heads together to make something truly like off the wall, which I can kind of appreciate, but I don't know if that makes it a good movie.
Yeah. Okay, so is it time to talk about it now?
About time, yeah.
Dun 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 dun.
The Avengers.
The Avengers, not the British TV show. The Avengers.
Not the Uma Thurman piece of shit.
Oh my god. This was the first midnight screening I had ever gone to. I remember I was in a seminar at that particular point in my life. Yeah. I ducked out of the seminar early, hopped on the subway, went to meet my friends, and we drove to the theater, and there was a wicked thunderstorm last night. It was almost as if Thor had lit up the sky just for this movie.
I love it.
So... And there was also, and it also played directly into that line when Thor's introduced, where like lightning inexplicably appears and thunder, and then Cap is like, "What's the matter? Scared a little lightning?" And Loki's like, "I'm not overly fond of what follows." And then the rest is history. I gotta be honest, I was dreading for this movie to be just another like popcorn like flick that to just come and go. It wasn't. Like, this movie stayed with me for months afterwards. It did something that movies hadn't done for me in a long time. It made me feel like a kid again, just enjoying and having so much fun. And just, it felt, having going to the movies be like a roller coaster ride. I mean, I fawned over it enough. Yeah. What was it like for you guys, just seeing it in the theater for the first time?
Oh, it was epic. I gotta say, when I first watched it, in a packed theater with my girlfriend at the time, it was pretty exciting. And I remember like I was worried. Well, actually, you know what? I wasn't even all that worried. I knew it was going to be good, but I wasn't expecting how solid overall it would be. Every character has like a proper beat. Everyone has like their time to shine. No one's like put in the sideline. No one's just a special effect. Like I care for all 6 of the characters. And Loki's a fun villain, and like the final action sequence is immense and immaculately put together.
Yeah.
Well, the moment I died when Hulk smashed Loki is a moment I will always remember throughout my theater going experience.
I remember people going nuts for that. I had a very. Oh, sorry.
Go on. No, go on, Michael.
I had a very similar experience too. What was kind of funny was I think I had plans to see it or something like that, but I had not actually purchased any tickets for it. I went to the Scotiabank Theatre in downtown Toronto. Yeah, my heart lives there. It's been kind of sad not going there.
Great theater.
But anyway, we showed up to the theater, and it was just so unprecedented, like how many tickets this was selling. Like it was so busy that they were adding shows. They had a midnight screening plan, but then they were adding like a 12:10 and like a 12:20 and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
And we were like, okay, we'll just see it when we can see it, and we saw it like maybe 12:30 somewhere in there.
Yeah.
And it was a blast. It was everything you guys said it was. And then I just remember after the screening, everyone exiting the theater, the mass exodus of like 4 simultaneous screenings of this movie, and everyone was just so excited and so like a buzz.
Yeah.
And it did have that feeling where it stayed with me for a while. Yeah. And I remember having to get up early or something the next day and just thinking it was so definitively worth it. I'm like, I'm so glad that I went and saw that.
Yeah, it would have either make or break Marvel Studios.
That's true.
It had to be successful.
It did, and it was.
Lo and behold, it was. And we continued watching. It was at this moment that I realized that all these things were connected.
Yeah, and just going back to the characters very briefly. Black Widow is expanded in ways we didn't see possible. Hulk is redone fabulously.
Holy shit! And Hulk well done in the Avengers.
And with Loki, they took an okay, or I would say good villain and made him an iconic villain. Like
this was one. Yeah, Loki was fantastic in the movie, but this was one thing I wanted to make sure I didn't forget when we got to the movie.
Yeah,
Hulk had suffered through 2 like thoroughly mediocre solo films, and I remember when this movie came out, everyone loved Hulk. Like people went nuts for him. He was everyone's favorite character, and it just kind of went to show that he worked so well as like a piece of the puzzle. Like when you kind of gave him this really meaty supporting role, it was really what his character needed.
Yeah.
And now there's been a billion Hulk movies since then, and he's always a delight to watch.
Mark Ruffalo made him very affable. You're right. He wasn't just mopey 90% of the time.
Yeah. So, at this point, Marvel Studios, the studio that is responsible for distributing the MCU, had been bought out by Disney. So, from this point on, Disney would take over distribution of everything. But meanwhile, at Sony, their flagship character that they still had the rights to got a reboot 2 months after the Avengers hit theaters. And boy, did people have mixed feelings about that. Andrew Garfield took on the spider suit in The Amazing Spider-Man.
The web series.
Directed by Mark Webb.
That's what I call it.
That's so great. Yeah, no.
I don't really give a fuck about these movies.
I think it's kind of cool that they kind of explored a side of Peter Parker that we haven't seen before. Like they talk about his parents.
They do mention his parents a lot.
Andrew Garfield's a good actor. I loved his role in The Social Network is what gave me the faith that he would be good in this movie. People compare him to Shia LaBeouf as Sam Witwicky in Transformers when they talk about his version of Peter Parker.
Okay.
Well, because he stutters a lot, he has the mannerisms of like a dweeb.
He's not really a total nerd though. Like he's kind of like a hip nerd.
He's like this skater kid who doesn't really fit in with the masses.
Yeah.
And
he's not.
They tried to reinvent him in a way that didn't quite work.
It felt like Sony watched a bunch of Gatorade commercials and said, "No, it felt like Sony watched a bunch of."
They wanted him to be cool.
Yeah.
But Peter Parker never was cool.
Yeah.
So it's annoying.
When you watch the... So here's the thing about this movie, this 2012 Spider-Man movie.
Yeah.
I think it has some interesting stuff in it, and I think it's an interesting like tone for the movie. Yeah. But where it falls apart is the fact that it makes promises it doesn't exactly bank on.
Bingo.
By which I mean 2 years later it would be followed by a sequel that is so detached from this movie, it doesn't even feel like the same series. So, it would ultimately be the only sequel. It would not be a trilogy. It would be a duology, or whatever you call it. But these two movies are so disjointed that it's kind of just weird.
Yeah.
Cash is checks they can't.
They got like they also something interesting to know. They got they went from who's the name of the guy who died in a plane crash very tragically? He scored Avatar, Titanic, a bunch of
Howard Shore?
No, Howard Shore is Lord of the Rings. James Horner.
Oh. James Horner, okay.
James Horner.
Yeah.
I got him mixed up.
Amazing Spider-Man 2 was very tragically, I believe it was the last movie he scored, so he couldn't come back for the sequel. He was replaced with he was replaced with Hans Zimmer in the sequel.
Oh yeah,
and
Pharrell Williams.
Can we just get the sequel out of the way? Because I don't want to talk about when it comes up. The sequel, I enjoy it even less than this movie. I mean, I can still
enjoy it even less than X-Men 3.
Oh wow! Well, we talked about it.
A lot.
We talked about it again in our bad movies episode.
No, I picked that one especially because I remember I came to a theater. It was like an underground theater, and there was like games and concessions. People were dressed like Spider-Man. It was a big event for this theater. They really wanted to sell tickets. I was sitting next to a girl dressed like Gwen Stacy. I will say Emma Stone's alright as Gwen Stacy.
I love her as Gwen Stacy.
She's alright. I mean, yeah, and then I sat through the whole thing and I just felt drained afterwards.
Yeah.
And I was saying to myself like, "Fuck."
Yeah.
That was a huge waste of my time. And I even turned to the girl who was dressed as Gwen Stacy. I'm like, "Well, how did you like it?" She's like, "It was okay." Yeah, it was okay. It was like that unconfirmed feeling that you get.
Well, the one good part of the second movie is the scene where he fights the Goblin and they recreate the classic comic book scene where he kills Gwen Stacy.
That's like the only scene that really mattered.
Yeah. Well, the whole movie built up to that.
Out of this 2.5 hour movie, that was the one scene.
Yeah. One thing that is especially kind of weird about Amazing Spider-Man 2 is it ends in like the middle of a fight.
Yeah.
Which obviously they thought they were going to get the chance to make a million more sequels. It's even been rumored they're planning their own cinematic universe.
Yeah.
Well, it's dumb because that's how they ended the trailer.
It's just like it's such an odd choice to like end the movie that way because they kind of cemented their own fortune. Like the series just ends on such a weird note, and we never get to see what happens to those characters.
Well, what they were gonna do. You're right, Michael. They wanted to make a cinematic universe because they saw what Marvel Studios was doing, and they wanted to do that, but with Spider-Man. And now I think there is potential for a cinematic universe within Spider-Man lore. The Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse movie is already getting a sequel, so that proves that point. But the fact that ASM 2 flopped and their lineup wasn't very interesting. Like, they wanted to give the Sinister Six a solo movie. They wanted to give Venom eventually got his solo movie, but we'll get to
talk about that.
Yeah, but anyways, Spider-Man is my favorite superhero, and ASM I think is the only Spider-Man movie that I like dislike. Like,
it's really ASM 2.
ASM 2, sorry. I can still have, my heart still has like a soft spot sort of for parts of the first Amazing Spider-Man. There's only one part of ASM 2 that I actually like, and that's at the end, and by then you have to sit through a long movie.
Yeah.
But
when Spider-Man, like we said, that Spider-Man was the first like kind of superhero movie that got us into this genre. Yes, there have been like several iterations and kind of new Spider-Men over the years, but it's almost kind of a fun tradition at this point. To like keep seeing this character on the big screen.
So going back to the journey with Marvel, we're in 2013 now, and in this year we had Iron Man 3, and a welcome return after he kicked ass in the Avengers. It turns out that all the stuff he did in that big battle at the end of the Avengers really messed him up, and you get to see how Tony Stark like reaches an arc in not only the MCU but over his own trilogy. It was cool. It was directed by Shane Black, who had worked with Downey on Kiss Kiss Bang Bang 7 years prior. So Kiss Kiss Bang Bang was supposed to be his big comeback vehicle, but it didn't bring in the revenue that they were hoping for. So Iron Man and Tropic Thunder were Robert Downey Jr.'s big, like, official comeback movies.
Yes.
Yeah. So Iron Man 3, I think it's clever. I didn't know how to feel when I left the theater. I didn't know how to feel about what they did with the Mandarin, because in Iron Man lore, the Mandarin is like the Green Goblin of villains for Iron Man. He's like Iron Man's Joker. He's the arch nemesis. So
they did him a bit of a disservice, but I can see why they did it.
Yeah. they want to make
they wanted to be clever.
Yeah, they wanted to be clever, and it's almost like Mysterio in Spider-Man: Far From Home kind of recycled that whole shtick with like subverting expectations through deceit. Yeah. So, anyways,
I saw Iron Man 3 like months after it came out. Like I somehow missed its theatrical release, and I remember watching it at home. And you know, sometimes when you watch movies at home, you might be distracted or whatever. But I remember when that plot twist came up, I was like so confused. I was like,
Yeah.
Did I miss something? And then I realized like what they were going for, and I don't know. I always thought that twist was really kind of funny, so I never minded it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But because I have no attachment to the comics, the twist I thought was clever. It didn't bother me. Yeah. So moving on, the Wolverine. Not to be... what is it with making like solo movies for Wolverine?
Yeah, I gotta say, at this point, when this movie came out, I was like, I'm so fucking tired of Wolverine.
Yeah.
Like, he's in every... He's practically the protagonist of every X-Men movie. And now we have more and more spin-offs about him, and I'm like, I just don't care anymore. So I skipped this, and I still have yet to see it. I will see it sometime soon, probably this year.
The opening scene is surprisingly graphic.
Okay.
Yeah. Michael, have you seen this movie? Yeah.
I have seen this movie. I don't remember it as definitively as James Mangold's next Wolverine movie.
Oh, yeah.
But I am glad that this was made so he could get the chance to make that movie, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So yeah, I only remember like the opening scene. I don't really remember this movie too well. I've only seen it once. But
I've seen it nonce.
Oh yeah. And then the last Marvel movie of 2013 was Thor: The Dark World. The reason I enjoy this movie so much is because they ordered reshoots to have more Loki because he was so popular in the Avengers. Loki is the only thing I actually enjoyed about this movie.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
He is quite good in this movie. This
is a very generic, banal movie.
Well, you remember how Michael brought up an interesting point about the ASM movies where the Thor: The Dark World looks and feels nothing like the first Thor movie. And this is very likely because all three Thor movies had different directors. And that was a problem with like the tone of the character trilogies. Like, the Iron Man trilogy had Jon Favreau for the first two, and then Shane Black took over for the third one and changed the tone completely. Captain America, I kind of makes sense because Captain America had Joe Johnson to show him in the 40s, and then in the present day, he's directed by the Russo brothers when he goes into the future. So the tone change makes sense because he's in a new time. But with Thor, each of his movies feel like they're not part of a trilogy. Alan Taylor directed The Dark World, and he was a huge Game of Thrones director, and there's a reason why Asgard looks like King's Landing. It's because it was supposed to be that way. They wanted to pander to the Game of Thrones fans,
it's
too.
Stylistically designed to be that way, guys.
Yeah.
It's like poetry. It rhymes.
Yeah. So, not much more to say about Thor: The Dark World.
It's one of the lesser Marvel movies.
The villain sucked.
Oh god, he was terrible.
I think after The Abomination, he is the worst MCU villain.
Yeah, I would say that too.
No, I think...
Although I am partial to Tim Roth.
Yeah.
This movie also, I don't know, it does kind of suffer from actor apathy. I can tell that the people involved are not as invested as they were.
This is the last movie to have Lady Sif.
Sorry.
This is the last movie to have Lady Sif in the MCU.
Yeah, that's right.
She's completely vanished, and I have no idea what happened to her.
And in the beginning of Ragnarok, the Warriors 3 go out like bitches.
Whatever. Who cares?
And this Thor Dark World, it does not have good pacing at all.
The pacing's horrible.
I saw all these movies like kind of since the lockdown began, and I was looking at my clock a lot. I
really don't care about the human characters.
Yeah. It's interesting you brought up actor apathy because Natalie Portman initially did not want anything to do with the MCU after the first Thor. So she was contractually obligated against her will, in her own words, to be in the second one. And then she must have fought them really hard to get out of it because she wasn't in Ragnarok. But somehow they're getting her back.
I know that Natalie Portman was really keen on working with Patty Jenkins, who was originally lined up to work Thor 2.
Oh, wow.
So that might have had something to do with it. Patty Jenkins did, of course, get her shot at directing a superhero movie we'll talk about next time.
Yeah.
But
she has a very small filmography.
Yeah.
Like, other than she made Monster, and then, like, a few years, like, over a decade later, she made Wonder Woman.
Yeah.
That's kind of, that surprises me.
Yeah. But anyway, so Thor: The Dark World's not very fun to talk about. The next movie is very fun to talk about. Captain America: The Winter Soldier, directed by the Russos. This was incredible. Like, I remember going to see it in the theater, and the first 15 minutes felt like I was watching Captain America meets The Bourne Identity. It's
this movie made Captain America for me.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, because a lot of people made jokes at his expense, like, you look stupid in Avengers. And then after, like, Winter Soldier came out, I didn't hear anyone crack wise about Captain America. Like, this movie gave him, like, a whole lot of respect.
Yeah.
I had a really interesting conversation specifically about this movie quite recently.
Oh, yeah?
I was talking to a friend who really loves kind of I don't know what you'd say. Like he likes like art films and really kind of like movies that are steeped in like a certain genre. So I'm sure we'll get into this later with Scorsese's comments or whatever. But he is the kind of last person you might expect to really like a superhero movie.
Oh yeah.
And and he was saying, like, I will fully cop to it. Like, I was on Marty's side. I refused to watch superhero movies for years. Like, I was a superhero movie, like, hater. And then he's like, this is the movie that made me realize that not all superhero movies are created equal. And he's like, this movie is fantastic. And I'm like, yeah, that's kind of what this movie does really well, is it sets a really high standard, and it totally reinvents another kind of movie. It kind of reinvents the sort of like spy sort of thriller movie, and it does it really well. Well, and if it can win over someone who is a self-professed superhero hater, like, it's done its job.
Yeah. Well, my dad, all these years, my dad is a huge fan of spy thrillers, and he loved, just like your friend who hates superhero movies, my dad thinks comic book movies are like popcorn garbage, so he'll go to see them, but he won't really enjoy himself. Captain America: Winter Soldier, he had a lot to say about, and he was thrilled that they got Robert Redford from 3 Days of the Condor in this movie.
Yeah, and All the President's Men.
Yeah.
And so, isn't it kind of interesting how, like, when a comic book, a superhero movie gets made and it doesn't feel like a superhero movie, it feels like something else? That's really interesting. Next on our list is X-Men: Days of Future Past. I gotta be honest, I saw this after a shitty day at one of my old jobs, so my experience was kind of tainted. And it was an okay movie. I don't remember it too well. I just remember Peter Dinklage as a villain.
This is my favorite X-Men movie.
Okay,
hands down.
I quite like this movie.
I love it.
Didn't have the same relationship with X-Men because it wasn't like I watched them from the beginning or anything. But I thought that this was like just a really fun time travel movie.
Yeah, it's so
got
cool.
A lot of similarities with Terminator.
Yeah. Terminator. Yeah. We gotta start Mystique and Come With Me If You Want to Live.
So Marvel has
they combined two different timelines together to make this story.
So Marvel has its equivalent of Terminator, and it has its equivalent of Back to the Future. That's incredible.
The Quicksilver scene alone is, like, amazing.
Oh, I love that scene.
Even if it started a massive cliche of super speed characters just zooming around a very still environment.
with Sweet Dreams blasting over the scene.
No, that wasn't. That was the Apocalypse one.
Oh right, sorry, wrong movie.
Time in a Bottle.
Time in a Bottle was in this one. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. This is a fun movie.
Apparently, they didn't do that again in Dark Phoenix. They didn't have a Quicksilver scene.
Wow.
They could have played like a '90s song.
Yeah. But
Boo. X-Men Days of Future Past is awesome.
I should probably revisit it. Now the next one is a very personal movie to Lyle, but I'm hooked on a feeling. Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah.
I saw the trailers and thought, okay, Marvel is taking too big of a creative liberty. This is going to be horrible. This is going to derail their track record of otherwise highly successful, bankable films. And I go to see it, and my expectations were exceeded. Not because I loved it, but I walked. I'm like, wow, I didn't love it, but it wasn't terrible. Like,
oh, I freaking loved it. This was the first movie I ever saw. Was it 3 times or 4 or 5 times? I lost count. Because I was going through a really huge, massive downturn in my life. And this was the one movie that actually cheered me up.
Yeah.
Significantly.
Given that I still don't, given that about your life, where you were, I have no clue how you made it through that opening scene. Because the opening scene of Guardians of the Galaxy is what sold me on the movie.
I should probably give some context. Around early 2014, my mother passed away. So, after a few months, it was I wasn't smiling, I wasn't focusing on school, I was miserable every day, and then I was looking forward to Guardians, but I wasn't sure if I would like it that much, and then I ended up loving it, and it really it really had a positive impact on my life after that. So that was that's why it's so personal to me.
When I was getting to know you, and the opening scene where Peter is terrified of saying goodbye to his mom.
Oh, I really teared up in that scene.
Oh yeah, that scene is what sold me on the emotional experience of the movie, because I'm like, okay, this isn't just a goofy no fucks given adventure. This is serious. So I'm like, okay, I'm sold. Let's see where this goes.
It's very fun.
I have to be honest,
as soon as he starts dancing to Redbone, it's really fun.
Yeah.
That is just what sums up the movie for me. It's just fun. It's unabashedly and unashamedly weird. It throws together all these characters that the general population never had heard of, and just with such tremendous grace that it made them really lovable, recognizable characters.
Yeah, and this propelled Chris Pratt to the status of A-lister.
Yeah.
Also, people were talking about how this is one of the funniest movies in years. I only laughed really hard at this movie once.
I laughed a couple times. My favorite moment is when Groot just goes full ham on this platoon of guards and smashes them against a huge hallway. Yeah. And then he just turns after killing them all and just smiles.
Yeah.
You sick son of a bitch.
The next Marvel movie on our list, Lyle groaned, so it was a done for him.
Lyle Groninger here.
I was somewhat let down, but also impressed with this movie. Age of Ultron. The sequel to the Avengers, 3 years after one of the most amazing theater going experiences anyone could ever have. They tried to follow it up, and they got the same director, Joss Whedon, back, and it feels bogged down by exposition because they had to set up the Infinity Stones. They had to establish so many things that went off screen. That we didn't get to see in the gap between the movies.
It is very messy.
Yeah. The pacing's a little wonky, but it's not
unwatchable.
When the movie has a good moment,
it's perfectly adequate.
When the movie has a good moment, it's a damn good moment. My favorite scene is the scene where the Hulk goes nuts, way more nuts than usual, and Iron Man has to come in with the Hulkbuster. That's my favorite scene in the whole movie.
I remember when the trailer for this movie came out, I was still on that high of the first Avengers, and I was really excited for this movie to come out. And they released an early trailer,
and I would just like watch that trailer if I ever needed a pick me up, and I was kind of just like really looking forward to this movie for like months.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's not the first movie. It's probably the weakest of the 4 Avengers films, but it's like I do have fun with it.
Oh yeah.
And I think that the kinetic energy of that trailer is exactly why. Like it's like when there's a good scene that hits, like it is a lot of fun.
Yeah. I also like Ultron as a villain more than most people do. I think he's a bit underrated. Well, he's played by an incredible actor, James Spader. So
yeah. James Spader's fun in the role.
Yeah. But the people were actually complaining like, why is he so funny? And the counter argument I always heard was because Tony Stark created him as an AI, so therefore he would have snippets of Tony's sense of humor.
That makes sense. Yeah. That is one thing about this movie that, rewatching it years later, it is kind of, they throw everything to the wall when it comes to the quips. Like, like every scene has like a million jokes crammed into it, and sometimes you need a bit of breathing room for a really funny joke to actually work.
Well, the scene where it actually. In the Hulkbuster scene, Tony is throwing around quips because the scene where the Hulk is just tearing ass through a civilian population is really scary to watch. And then Tony kind of calms everything down with cracking a few one-liners here and there. Not much more to say about Age of Ultron. It was cannon fodder. Like it added to the universe.
It's a bridge to other bigger events.
Yeah, but I was kind of deflated when I left the theater because I thought, wow, we're never going to get that same emotional Avengers feeling ever again. The wow factor will never come back.
John Cena steps in. Are you sure about that?
Yeah, we'll get to that later, but the next movie I didn't like on my first viewing, but Lyle loved it.
Yeah, I really liked it.
And let's let Michael, because Michael brought up Paul Rudd. Let's let you take this. Ant-Man.
Sure.
Ant-Man.
Yeah, Ant-Man is fun. Paul Rudd is really good in this movie. He'd proven himself as like a leading man and as a supporting actor, which would come in very handy for a few more entries in this series.
Yeah.
But it's like a fun. It's another movie that kind of subverts a genre. Like it's kind of like a heist movie. And it does lean into its weirdness a lot. It's another character I'm sure a lot of people have not necessarily heard of.
Yeah, it's offbeat for sure.
But yeah, I love the interplay between Paul Rudd and Evangeline Lilly. I think it's actually even done better in the sequel.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
The sequel I like better.
I like the sequel more too, actually.
The one I'll just say this before I forget it. This actually pertains a bit more to Civil War, but I was recently rewatching Knocked Up, which was
I've seen Knocked Up.
So it was like kind of right before Paul Rudd would break out as a leading man in his own right, but he's obviously been hilarious for years prior to that. And there's a whole like weird kind of subplot in the movie Knocked Up about the movie Spider-Man 3. They both came out in the summer of 2007, but there's like several instances where they referenced Spider-Man 3, and James Franco's even in the movie like, promoting Spider-Man 3.
Yeah.
And it's funny hearing Paul Rudd talk about Spider-Man, and he even explicitly says, like, I'm going to go see the new Spider-Man movie. And then a decade later, he's in movies with Spider-Man.
You mean there's an Ant-Man and a Spider-Man?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I will say this before we wrap
kind
up.
Of funny, kind of cute.
Before we wrap up on Ant-Man, I gotta say the villain dies in probably the most horrific death in the MCU.
I think so too. Yeah.
He got ripped to shreds from the inside out when his seisminicator like went haywire.
Yeah.
And you see him scream as like every part of his body just shifts unnaturally.
Yeah.
It was like something out of a Cronenberg movie.
Yeah, no, Darren Cross dies a really uncomfortable death. He's Yellow Jacket.
Yeah.
And
I think he is a good villain too.
Yeah, he's alright. He's fun.
At this point, like, by the way, it's worth mentioning that with the exception of the Avengers movies, the Marvel villains are really bad.
We really have to talk about that. Yes, most of the villains they got better over time, but after Phase 2 was pretty bad for that.
Oh yeah, well, like I said, I liked Ultron, but the villains were so cookie cutter.
Dark Elf, Mandarin.
Actually, no, Winter Soldier's
okay. Alexander Pierce maybe not so much, but he's all right.
Yeah,
he's serviceable. Yeah, and then like Darren Cross, Yellow Jacket, I've heard some negative things.
Malekith is the worst.
He sucks ass.
Yeah.
But yeah, moving on from Ant-Man.
Ant-Man it segues directly into the movie that proved me wrong about the... Oh, god damn it! I keep getting cut off by another really bad movie. I'm going to talk...
You saw this one less than a week ago.
I had to watch Fan4stick as homework for this episode. You're laughing because you talked about this in our bad movie episode too.
This movie is not a movie.
Yeah. Okay.
This is not a film.
This movie? Okay, like I don't even know how to describe this.
It's unfinished.
This movie, as far as comic book movies go, this movie is abnormally short. It is an hour and 40 minutes.
It's an overlong first act.
It feels like it literally feels like the first act of what could have been a really interesting superhero movie. But yeah, just like the Hulk, why is it so hard to make a movie about the Fantastic Four? Why are they cursed?
I don't know. It's weird.
Well, what's interesting is Josh Trank, the director, wanted to do something different. He wanted it to be like a Winter Soldier. Like he wanted
he wanted it to be more like a Cronenberg movie.
Well, he wanted to deviate from the standard routine comic book storyline where it's body horror. Like, because when I think of the body in the first Fantastic Four movie from 2005. The body horror was like there, but it's downplayed by comedy. In this movie, the comedy is non-existent.
Oh, this movie's dour.
Yeah.
Like, if you think Man of Steel is dour, Fan4stick is fucking dour.
Man of Steel has moments...
It is...
We'll talk about Man of Steel next time, but yeah.
It's just a downer. It's not fun. Sometimes it tries to be cute, but most of the time it's just like everyone's a robot.
I've seen villains show up late to a party in a movie before.
Oh.
I have never seen a villain show up 10 minutes before credits and then die. What the hell?
For sure.
Can we just agree that they need to stop forcing Doctor Doom into every Fantastic Four movie?
Well, take it up with Avi Arad.
Oh yeah, Avi Arad. Yeah, we gotta talk about this. The producer, he's a Marvel producer. He's done virtually every Marvel movie up until like from the 90s all the way till now. And he has weird requirements for his movies. I'll give you two examples. In every Spider-Man movie, there has to be Green Goblin either has to be in it or he has to be acknowledged within the story. Like whether it's Green Goblin or Norman Osborn. He has to be mentioned. I think in the MCU they don't care so much, but like
he's not attached to. He's not a producer on any of these movies. It's mainly Kevin Feige who oversees everything.
Yeah, but like that's why in the Raimi trilogy, Green Goblin shows up in each time. Amazing Spider-Man, he's mentioned, and in the second one he even shows up. And for Fantastic Four, Avi Arad, I don't know why he has such a boner for Doctor Doom. But he will not accept. He will not give out the rights for Fantastic Four or whatever unless Doctor Doom is the principal villain.
Why?
Or he has to be like the main threat by the end.
Is Doctor Doom even the arch villain of the Fantastic Four?
Is.
Oh, so he's like the Joker.
He is the main villain, sure. But the problem is that there are other avenues. I want to see Mole Man for Christ's sakes.
Oh wow.
Like I just want to see like. Fantastic Four villains other than Doctor Doom show up and play around.
Yeah.
I'll tell this story super quickly.
Yeah.
I told you guys this the other day, but I think listeners might find this funny.
Yeah.
When Fantastic or whatever the hell you call it came out, this like prime piece of like advertising real estate on Queen Street in downtown Toronto, which like every week was updated with like whatever new movie was coming out, and I would walk by it literally every day. It was almost like kind of a cool thing to like look forward to. For some reason, I don't know if they stopped paying for the ad space or what the hell happened. Yeah. Fantastic, the like poster, just stayed up there as like the last poster to ever occupy this board space. Wow. And for over a year, this weird poster of the Fantastic movie that nobody saw and everybody forgot was just like staring me in the face. Yeah. And it was, I don't know why, I don't know what was so off-putting about that, but it just made me uncomfortable.
Well, for one thing, the marketing of this movie was an utter disaster for comic book movie standards.
I thought the first trailer was somewhat promising.
The first trailer makes it look like it's going to be pretty cool because there's action scenes. None of them, those action scenes all got cut from the final film, by the way. Yeah. That was garbage. Yeah. But they promoted it like super, super close to release, which typically when there's a comic book movie in the works, they promote it like anywhere from 8 to 6 months to a year beforehand. Trailers will come like months before, but no, this trailer came really late, like in the development. It came,
and they were convinced that they were gonna keep going with that series. Like they had sequels on the release calendar.
Not anymore. Not anymore. They don't.
I love how when I got back from my factory job at like 2 a.m. I looked at Rotten Tomatoes to see like what the score was because it was coming out that day. I think it was at like a measly 18% or something. Oh, and yeah. I started guffawing. Like I was laughing so hard that I woke up my dad. He's like, "Lyle, go to bed." I'm like, "Okay." It's just like my worst fears came true.
But yeah.
Yeah. Well, I just have one last thing.
Yeah, go on.
I know you're desperate to move on from it, and we've spent far too much time talking about this movie. But I was talking about how somebody like Matthew Vaughn made like a really cool, fun, original movie in Kick-Ass and was given the opportunity to do something cool like an X-Men movie. Yeah. I'd be remiss to not mention the fact that Josh Trank, his debut movie was Chronicle.
Yeah.
Set it's like an original superhero movie. Made as a found footage movie, and that movie's I don't know if you'll pardon the pun. I think that movie's fantastic.
Yeah, I love Chronicle.
I still need to see Chronicle.
I was intrigued by the idea of Josh Trank being given more money to do another thing, right? At a certain point, they were even grooming him to make a Star Wars movie.
Yeah,
which is crazy now. But
do you know which Star Wars movie he was going to make?
I think it was going to be Rogue One, wasn't it?
Nope. It was going to be the Boba Fett spinoff, which got canceled after Solo bombed. Thanks, toxic fans.
Whatever.
But anyways, I was like what somebody like Matthew Vaughn did to kind of propel their career, Josh Trank squandered all that goodwill with this movie. Yeah. And I know it wasn't entirely his fault because there was some obvious studio interference, but it's kind of just like, it kind of just bums me out that his career just ended that way.
Well, they cut like his budget by a full third, like a couple days before the shooting began.
I also heard there was some unprofessionalism on his part on the set.
Well, the rumors are all over the place.
Might just be rumors. Like maybe like Fox was trying to like cover their tracks and make him look like the bad guy. I don't know.
You also have to remember, Miles Teller has a bit of a reputation for being a diva sometimes, so at least that's what I've heard. Yeah. So there's not much more to say. Can we just move on?
Yeah,
Let's
please.
Move on.
Pretty pleased with the cherry on top.
Oh my god.
Also, the thing has no dick.
Yeah, fucking Brody Bruce would be having a field day if he saw Fantastic.
Speaking of dicks, next up is 2016's Deadpool.
Deadpool is another game changer in this genre because thanks to this motherfucker, comic book movies can be rated R now, and they can be as
motherfucker,
and they can be as gory and as intestine spilling driven as they want.
Oh yes,
yeah,
it's glorious.
I gotta be honest. the story of how this got made, you owe it to Ryan Reynolds, because Ryan Reynolds paid the screenwriters out of his own pocket when the studio refused to pay them for overtime on the set. He worked very closely to make sure that they wrote a story that was as in keeping with the character as possible. Deadpool and Wolverine are also Canadian superheroes. We completely forgot to mention this. But yeah,
I think it's well known.
And they filmed the bulk of this in Vancouver too.
Nice.
So
yeah, Ryan Reynolds' hometown.
Yeah, and Deadpool. I'm gonna be honest. The plot is generic as hell, but,
that's not the selling point. The selling point is Deadpool's antics.
Like the first Iron Man movie is a generic plot.
Going to Deadpool.
Going to Deadpool, his character and his personality and his jokes and the way and the style of directing makes the movie. It's well done.
I remember when I saw this in 2016.
Yeah.
It was over a long weekend, Family Day weekend or whatever.
Oh yeah, that's right.
And it was, considering Deadpool was maybe not a household name to the extent that like Spider-Man is.
Yeah.
The theater again at Scotiabank was so busy, and there were so many shows sold out for it that I was like, before I even saw the movie, I just had this kind of sense of like, oh, this is really cool that he's finally getting his due.
Yeah.
And yeah.
I watched the promo trailer, like kind of like it was almost like a demo reel.
Yeah.
Of him like fighting the guys in the car on the highway, and I watched that scene. I watched that.
I've never seen that.
I must have seen that clip like 20 times because I was like in love with it. I'm like, they got it right.
I was working at HMV at the time this movie was like on its way, and one of my coworkers who, wow, you've met, he's a cool guy. He is the biggest Deadpool fan I know. He saw this on opening day. I think he even cosplayed like to the theater. He was that committed. He loved it. He went back for multiple viewings. He was so thrilled. And to give you some context, he's also a ginormous Star Wars fan. He saw The Force Awakens, and he came back saying, it was good. I mean, I liked it. He said he enjoyed it. But when he came back from Deadpool, there was an excitement in his voice and in his eyes that I had never seen before. Yeah, he was ecstatic that Deadpool was done justice, and he went back to multiple viewings. So now, I was building up to this, but Captain America: Civil War. This renewed my faith in the MCU, because after Age of Ultron and after the fact that I didn't really care for Ant-Man, I thought the MCU was going to be dead and just mediocre from this point forward. So I went into this movie with very low expectations. I was blown out of the water. Like, what they do with these characters is so clever. Like, Lyle will talk about like his emotional experience with it, but for me, just understanding that this movie does have an antagonist that starts the whole conflict, but
he's very underrated.
Yeah, Zemo.
Zemo is underrated, but yeah.
But yeah, you can see this movie from both perspectives. Like, it's meant, the way it was marketed. By the way, 2016 was the year that movies had this like dramatic rivalry face-off on the posters, because Angry Birds did this. Neighbors 2 Sorority Rising did this in their poster. Captain America Civil War did this, and Batman vs Superman did this. So yeah, the marketing for this, that was a marketing cliche of 2016, and I think that was deliberate, because 2016 was an election year, and there are a lot of movies in election years that are all about, divide and clashing ideas. So, and that's intentional on Hollywood's part. It's been that way throughout the years. But back to Civil War. The two sides of this story are so nuanced that you can actually sympathize with both of them at times. Like, ultimately, when I walked out of the theater, I found myself siding mostly with Iron Man, mainly because I'm biased because I like Iron Man more as a character. But now that I watched it a bunch of more times, I agree with Cap a lot more and more. Even though he's outside the law, what he's doing is actually like better in the long run, and the future MCU films really show that. Fun fact, also this it was the introduction to Black Panther and Tom Holland's Spider-Man, both of which would go on to be iconic characters in later MCU films.
Yeah.
And this is such a good ensemble movie, similar to what they did in the first Avengers movie, but like with even more characters. I feel like everyone gets their due really well, and there's so many arcs to integrate into this movie, and all of them are pulled off really well.
Yeah.
And I have to say, like, seeing this for the first time again at Scotiabank Theater in IMAX, the title card, the location title cards in this movie are massive. It was an interesting creative choice. They take up the whole screen. The moment I saw the word Queens and I knew like what was about to happen was crazy exciting. It was such a good way to introduce that character.
Yeah, my theater cheered.
Yeah.
You brought up Scotiabank a few times. Did they know you down there by now?
Maybe. I don't know. Yeah. They have a pretty big like staff.
Yeah.
And there's so many kind of events that happen down there that I find it's like the spot to go to, but you don't necessarily run into the same people.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. So, anyways,
I should probably share my thoughts.
Yeah. What? How do you feel about Civil War? Because it kind of we fawned over it.
Let me say. It's kind of a pain in the ass for me to see it, because it's like you guys are being all up in your own grills. You're fighting each other. You're bashing heads. Ultimately, none of it matters because a big purple man's gonna come out of space, fuck up the world, and it's because of you dipshits that it happened. So if you just pulled up your pants for 2 seconds, you would have been able to fight Thanos correctly. But oh no, you had to have a spat over some stupid law that occurred. I didn't like the law, the Sokovia Accords, because I didn't like that. It's basically like, oh, you guys caused so much damage across the world that you got to be like monitored. You haven't been monitored this whole time. I'm like, what about S.H.I.E.L.D., moron? And then all of a sudden it's like, of course there's collateral damage. Everything has collateral damage. And even if we had these fucking accords, you're going to have collateral damage. So what's the fucking point? I was on Cap's side every single time I watched this movie. I don't think I ever sided with Iron Man once.
No.
But anyways, those are my thoughts on Civil War. It was cool seeing Spider-Man. Like, I liked when he leaped onto the field and he's like, hey, everyone.
That Empire Strikes Back reference, I was howling when he said that. Because, like, my favorite superhero just referenced one of my favorite Star Wars movies. This is the best thing I've ever seen in my life. Like, the biggest, geek moment, like, for me in a theater was probably that. But the wow factor that I thought I would never see again with the Avengers came back in this film, and that was super special. Moving on, the next one is kind of a dud. X-Men Apocalypse. Lyle and I saw X-Men Apocalypse with a friend of ours who is a huge X-Men fan, and he was cheering like in the theater. Remember? Yeah.
Man, for a movie called X-Men Apocalypse is the most generic shit ever.
Yeah.
There's nothing interesting about him. It's like, everything they built was fall, and from the ashes of that world will build a better one. That's all I remember him. That's the only line I remember him saying.
Yeah. And then there was that...
He was played by Rami Malek, wasn't he?
Nope, Oscar Isaac.
Fuck. One or the other, totally different guys.
There's a joke in this movie that falls flat because... I don't know if you remember this. I barely remember this movie, but I remember there's a joke in this movie where, because it takes place in the 1980s, they go see Return of the Jedi, and then they make this joke like, "Oh, the third one is never the best movie." Ha ha ha. It's this little wink. But within the context of what they're doing, that joke makes zero sense because, like, that wasn't. Like, in the 80s, that was not, like, a common thing to know or say. Because they weren't capitalizing on every trilogy back then.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's just kind of, to me, that just sort of cements everything wrong with that movie. It takes place in the 80s, but doesn't do a lot with the idea. Yeah. And it's after the success of Days of Future Past, it's just a really disappointing third entry.
It is pretty flat overall, but I did appreciate what they did with the younger X-Men. Yeah. For the most part, they do all of them with a good care of they do it with some justice.
And the kid who would later star in Ready Player One plays your boy.
Yeah, Ty Sheridan's an excellent Cyclops, actually.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have seen more of him. Yeah. Sorry, I'm just geeking out on Cyclops today.
Yeah, no, this...
Olivia,
there was also
Olivia Munn was in this.
There was also a marketing disaster because you see Apocalypse strangling Mystique, and people were like, "That's misogyny," and the rebuttal was like, "He's trying to appear as threatening," and it's like, well, and Mystique is powerful, dude. Like, she can fight back. She's a superhero.
Actually, she's an anti-hero, but
yeah.
Mystique is, or maybe we'll save this for.
I can't say if I really like Jennifer Lawrence's Mystique or not. Yeah. It kind of depends.
I was just gonna say, I don't think. Yeah, I may as well just say it now before I forget. I don't think Jennifer Lawrence, beyond the first iteration, the first time she played that character, she clearly loses interest in being a part of that
worse
franchise.
And worse in each
you can just see it.
Yeah. Well, in Apocalypse, she's hardly blue.
Yeah.
In most scenes, she's just regular Jennifer Lawrence.
Yeah.
And I don't know why she's such a prominent member of the X-Men when she's more of a Brotherhood member.
Yeah.
Like, she's far more villainous in the comics, but they make her out to be like an activist and a hero. And I don't get that. I think it was all because she was so popular back then, and they had to have her.
They got her at the right time, but it was clear that she did not know what she was signing up for.
Yeah.
Pay attention to the contracts, people.
Yeah, you like makeup? You want to sit in a chair for 7 hours? Hold on to your butts.
Okay. So,
shall we move on?
2016 wrapped itself up with Doctor Strange. This was fun to see in the theater. The visual elements are impressive. It takes the visual like aesthetic of the movie Inception and like multiplies it by 10. Stephen Strange himself is a bit of an of an okay character. He's played by one of the biggest Brits working in the industry, and he does a convincing American accent. I'm so glad his accent is better than whatever the hell that was in Black Mass. Oh my god. That Boston accent. Michael, you know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
There's this really I'll just say two quick things about this movie. But there's this really funny clip that I don't know why, but it only kind of surfaced like recently, and it's when they were filming Doctor Strange in New York City. Benedict Cumberbatch like walks into this comic book store like in full costume.
Oh wow.
And talks to the guys. And it's really funny and kind of cute.
That's hilarious.
The other funny, I do really enjoy this movie. I think its visual power is everything going for it. Like I think the visuals are really fun in this movie. So it's kind of hilarious and ironic was, for some reason, I don't know why, I don't remember why, I don't think I've ever seen this with any other movie, certainly not like a huge release of a Marvel caliber. About a month before this movie came out, they showed like a 10-minute preview, again at Scotiabank Theatre. And I think it was free. I think they just wanted to like pack the house for some reason. But I got a pass to see 10 minutes of Doctor Strange. And those 10 minutes like sold me. Like I was going to go back and see it regardless. But they show this like really trippy sequence from when he's like kind of discovering his powers for the first time.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, this is really cool. Like I'm really excited for this movie. I don't know why they did this. I don't remember what it was for. But then like 2 solid months passed before I myself saw the movie and everyone else was talking about it. And then I was like, I went back and I had fun. I think that movie is meant to be seen on the biggest screen you can. And it introduces like literal magic into the mix of the MCU, where in the past the magic or powers had always kind of been grounded or had a basis in science, but it's a pretty fun like wizard movie.
I like the fact that it explores spirituality and like chakras and energy fragments, because like my mom kind of raised me on that stuff, so it's cool to see like when you grow up around that, and it's cool to see. But yeah, no, other than that, like, the story's kind of generic. It's an origin story. It taps into the idea that there is a multiverse, but they don't do a whole lot with that yet. They will. Moving on. Fun movie, entertaining.
A little bland.
A little bland. It's entertaining. Logan. We're moving into 2017. Now it seems that like Marvel can. A movie can come in the early months of the year and still like make a shit ton of money. This is the second year, the second of what will be 4 years in a row where this happens. In 2016, Deadpool came out in February and made unheard of money for not just an R-rated movie, but for like a February release movie. The only other movie before Deadpool that made that much money in February was those 50 Shades movies.
Oh boy.
Yeah, because you gotta have a date ideas for Valentine's Day, you know. But anyway, so Logan came out, I believe, in March, which is like a dead time for like studios. But the theater we were in, Lyle, was moderately full. I remember it being a very powerful story, and I remember the ending feeling like the ending of Toy Story 3. Like, that's how much it got to me emotionally. Like, and I'm not like even like emotionally that drawn to the X-Men, but I felt something at the end of this movie. And that, I think, is an accomplishment in itself. A perfect send-off is all you could.
Logan is again a kind of an instance that not all superhero movies are the same. I think that's a very dismissive thing that's often said about the genre, but Logan is a bleak movie, and it hits hard, the drama, I feel, and I feel like it's done exceptionally well. James Mangold had like a really good track record prior to this. I think Girl Interrupted is a fantastic movie, and
that's a good one.
And next on the list is, I think, my personal favorite of this year, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. People complained about it, like some critics that I look up to, like online critics I look up to, really ripped this movie a new one. I thought it was better than the first. Like, the first movie only made me laugh once. I was laughing all the way, like every 5 or 10 minutes while watching this movie. It's the humor just works for me.
Yeah, I love.
I think this movie works. The themes of fatherhood are really well done in this movie.
Yeah.
There's a sort of twist involving the father character. I won't say if you've been living under a rock and never saw this movie, but the sort of like things that come to light towards the end of this movie, and coupled with the soundtrack of that Cat Stevens song about fatherhood, that's a really emotional punch. I thought that not the climax, but the sort of emotional resolution of Guardians of the Galaxy 2 is like some of the best things I've seen in a Marvel movie. I loved that last act.
One of the things that at this point I had seen the trailer for Thor Ragnarok, and I heard that Thor Ragnarok was going to be the darkest of the Thor films and the funniest of the four Thor films at the same time. So I was skeptical, like how they were going to juggle those two tones. But after I saw Guardians 2 juggle the two tones really, really well, like of just really funny and really dark, I'm like, okay, Thor Ragnarok might not be so bad after all. But great movie. Moving on, Spider-Man Homecoming, I believe, is next. This is the first solo Spider-Man movie, and just in the MCU, and just like the director of the director of Wonder Woman. John Watts, who directed Spider-Man: Homecoming, has very little to his name, like before an MCU movie. So I thought that's pretty cool. There are a lot of it's very different from every other Spider-Man movie you'll ever see. Because he's like the pipsqueak of the Avengers, he's not this larger-than-life entity in his own movie anymore. He is this kid who wants to roll with the big boys. And I think there's an adorable element to that. There's also the wonkiest references to John Hughes of all filmmakers and of all cinematic storytellers in this movie. At first I didn't get why John Hughes, but then once you watch it a couple more times and you understand the kind of work that John Hughes...
It's a high school movie.
Yeah.
And its essence.
Yeah. The villain is when this is when the villains in Marvel were getting really good. Vulture is amazing.
Great. Michael Keaton, oh my god.
Yeah. I love Michael Keaton. I'm gonna talk about this for sure more when we do DC. Tomorrow, But he's an actor I've always looked up to and admired, and he was kind of relatively riding high on like a sort of recentish sort of comeback due to the success of Birdman.
Oh yes.
And Keaton fucking kills it in this movie. Like he is such a good villain, and he is just such a delight for me to watch always that every time he was on screen I had a huge smile on my face.
Yeah, we'll see more of him later.
Yeah, and then Marvel closed out 2017 with Thor Ragnarok. This was helmed by a legendary filmmaker. I need to see more of his work. Taika Waititi helmed this movie.
Yep.
And at this point, I didn't even care that all the Thor movies had different tones because of their different directors. But whatever they did to reboot Thor's tone, it worked really well. And Hela, the goddess of death, is an excellent villain. They incorporate the Hulk really well. The way the Dark World kind of ended kind of sets you up like it's take back Asgard from Loki, because it sets up that Loki was like...
He was gonna fuck shit up.
Yeah.
But then ultimately it didn't matter. This movie feels like a reset.
Yeah.
Like everything that people really didn't give a crap about in Thor or Thor 2, they kind of just throw under the rug and do their own thing, which I kind of admire because I didn't like the Thor movies up until this point. But they really did like a really good remodeling. Some people complain that it's not a worthy like adaptation of Thor.
They're talking about worthy, and he has to be worthy to wield his hammer.
Yeah, I get it. But like,
Taika Waititi, the director, is also the funniest character in the movie. He plays Korg, the pile of rocks, and he's got some lines in this movie and in his reappearance in Endgame that like are so funny. I just think about them all the time.
Yeah, pretty good. Yeah, but no, like, you know what? When I first saw Ragnarok, it's like, man, I totally ship Hela with Thanos.
Yeah.
Because remember in Avengers, he's like, to challenge him is to court death. I'm like, well, Hela is death. Are they gonna hook up or something? I'm down. But no, doesn't happen that way. Because she gets destroyed by Mr. Krabs.
Oh, that's right. Clancy Brown voices Surtur.
Yeah.
The guy who destroys Asgard by the prophecy. Oops, I spoiled the movie. Sorry.
Oh, no. Came out a few years ago, guys. Get with the program.
Okay. So the next so while that kind of got people excited for what was to come, because the movie ends where Ragnarok ends where the next Avengers movie would begin. But before that, we have to talk about... Oh, this is going to hurt. Rest in power, King T'Challa. Chadwick Boseman, man. Taken way too soon. Long live the king. I swear to God.
Yeah.
Do you know this is actually the 4th time in movie history where we've lost a lead actor who played a superhero? People in comic movies have died... all the time, but never where it was like the guy playing a main superhero. The first two were Superman actors, George Reeves and Christopher Reeve. Both of them died relatively young. Adam West died after... Adam West had a good run, though. He lived a long, fulfilled life. He got old.
What about Brandon Lee?
from The Crow.
Yeah, that's a super.
Oh yeah, 5.
Yeah.
Sorry, how the hell do I forget that?
I thought that was one of the ones you were gonna say.
Yeah, no. Consider that the 5th one. Then so there's George Reeves, Christopher Reeves, Brandon Lee, Adam West, and Chadwick Boseman.
He's the first person, aside from maybe Stan Lee, to die in the MCU. He's the first actor of a mainstream headlining Marvel movie.
Yeah, but so the case in point, Black Panther. Black Panther made cinematic history culturally and like with its box office money. It basically was a staple for the black community. They were going to the theaters in like African garbs, like in like tribal ceremonial outfits. The hype was crazy. Now, Michael, I want you to tell your story of like what the reaction in the theater was like, because I noticed this too. Lyle and I saw this in Richmond Hill, so I don't know if the reaction was the same as yours. What was it like watching this in the theater compared to other comic book movies? Because it was unlike any other comic book movie theater going experience.
Yeah, I do have a story about Black Panther that links a bit more directly to Infinity War. I can tell that in like a second.
Yeah, no, well, Infinity War is coming up next, so yeah.
Yeah, so I will get to that, but yeah, I remember the. I don't remember where I did see this. I know that I saw this in a really big theater and that like every seat was full, and I feel like I maybe even saw it in the daytime or something, which was really saying something.
Yeah.
That it was that busy and that sold out then. But I do remember the excitement, the anticipation of seeing this movie. Like the place was abuzz, and you could tell that like something was shifting. That like Black Panther was about to become this huge cultural phenomenon. And it was really exciting and really cool to kind of feel that. I'll get to my next point with our next movie.
Well, I didn't. At first, I thought, it's okay. It's kind of a routine like Marvel story, but then I actually went to watch it a second time by myself. And I was actually in a very rough financial spot at the time I saw this movie, so in a way, like, it kind of gave me a lot of hope, just for the future. So
this is oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so the second time I saw it, like, cause I took a screenwriting like phone seminar on this movie because I subscribed to this website called screenwritingu.com or screenwritersu.com, and they have a bunch of like really reasonably priced writing courses. And I just remember they held a seminar talking about Black Panther, and they never did this for any other Marvel movie. Like, I had only discovered them like a year before, but they didn't really talk about comic book movie scripts. Black Panther warranted their attention because of its financial successful and just for how brilliant, like, as a story it was. So I did the seminar that praised Black Panther up the wall. Then I went back to see it a second time, and I understood, like, the real brilliance, like, in multiple layers of this movie, like, because if you think about like how it relates to like black equality and like where blacks like fit in the world, it kind of think about this. You have like T'Challa, who is like the Martin Luther King of this story, and then you have Killmonger, who's like the Malcolm X, like, we're going to be aggressive, we're going to force change through violence, we're going to scare the world into following us. And then and if you really think about it, I don't want to get political at all, but people were like talking that there was a political argument over this movie, whatever, but if you think about it, the way T'Challa runs the country is like very conservative, and the way Killmonger wants to change it is super to the left of like anything. So just when you think about that, like it's really interesting to go through. But so Black Panther, we're gonna be here all night because we still got some more to do. The next movie,
I just had one quick cool thing to say about the Black Panther before we move on. The MCU at this point had been around for 10 years, so it
definitely enough influence that it was now influencing the next generation.
Yeah.
And what's totally fascinating about this is I've heard reports that Ryan Coogler, who's a relatively young guy, it's only his third movie. Fruitvale Station is great. Creed is really, really good. And then he gets the chance to go to that next level with Black Panther. But I've heard that he was like a big fan of the original Iron Man movie, and then he saw it like opening day and stuff.
Oh, wow.
So to think that he would, like then direct the biggest Marvel movie yet is pretty fantastic.
Oh,
and then I also heard a similar story about how Winston Duke, M'Baku, and Lupita Nyong'o Nakia, they went to school together.
Oh, wow.
And apparently they had seen the first Avengers movie together as well. And it was another thing of like I don't know if it was something that put them on that path, but like apparently they shared that moment of like, how cool would it be to be in a superhero movie?
Oh,
and then they got to pull it off.
That's really special.
Cool.
That's great.
Yeah.
And speaking of the Avengers, what I like to call one of the most successful marketing and business decisions ever made in the history of films and the history of marketing in general, Avengers: Infinity War. The hype for this was established as soon as the second Avengers and the first Avengers movie ended, because you knew Thanos was the big baddie. You knew he was going to come. You knew that the Infinity Stones were playing a part in the background, but it all comes to fruition here. This movie is a masterpiece. It juggles all these characters that have been built up for now, at this point, 10 years. They juggle them so well. The pacing is perfect. The whole concept is just a thrill ride. Now, I'm not gonna lie. Going into the theater to see this the first time was super stressful, because this is the time when the producers came out and said, this is gonna be a bloodbath. Characters are gonna die and they're not gonna come back. So I'm like,
right.
Yeah. And I mean, they kind of oversold that, but. Yeah.
And the ensemble there's so many Marvel characters that are established through so many franchises at this point. Yeah. Everyone gets a good amount of screen time, but it's pretty interesting because like Thanos is arguably the main character, so it's like
I've heard that
weird
before.
Thing where the villain is like the spotlight and the good guys are sort of the ensemble supporting cast, which is pretty unique way to tell that story.
I just remember, like, being in the theater, being super stressed, like going through the motions, and then as soon as the movie was over, for all two of you, I think, who don't know what happens, I'm not going to talk about what happens, because like I'm just going to talk about what it was like to react to there. I sat as the last minute of this movie was going on. I sat there in a perpetual state of denial. Like, I did not want to acknowledge what had just happened. And then the credits rolled. The credits rolled, and it just hits you like a bag of bricks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the one thing I wanted to say about this movie was this movie came out. The MCU completely radicalized the concept of a sequel, because they were now releasing 3-4 movies a year.
Yeah.
But this movie came out like 8-10 weeks after Black Panther, like really close after, like 2 months after it. And the scene where they establish that they're going to go to Wakanda to visit him, and they start playing the Wakanda theme, which is like really only just been established months prior.
Yeah.
There were chills in the theater.
Yeah.
And people started like cheering and screaming, and like I loved the Black Panther movie, his solo film, but it was like in that moment where I kind of understood that his impact was going to kind of last forever.
Yeah.
And I'm choking myself up now just talking about that, knowing what we know now, but like the fact that people are so excited to see Black Panther again so soon, like, was really something special.
Lyle, what was that like just for you, like, just being in the theater? He was insane.
Sure was.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, it sure was. It was great. It was awesome. Yeah.
Anyways, Deadpool 2.
Fuck.
Deadpool 2 is underwhelming. There's not much to...
Didn't like it.
Yeah. There's not much to say.
Deadpool 2, yeah, I agree that it's underwhelming. I didn't feel very much when I was, like, done with the movie. But what's interesting about this movie... I'm sorry that I cut you off. I'm sure you had more.
Oh, no, it's fine. Go ahead.
What's interesting about this movie is they tried to ram it down our throats 3 times within the course of a year. Because I don't know if you remember this, but when it came out on home release, there was another cut of the movie that they released.
Oh yeah, I thought that was overdoing it. Like quite honestly.
And then not even 6 months after that, they re-released it at Christmas, and it was another cut. So in less than a year, there were 3 cuts of this movie floating around, and they had kind of subbed out jokes, and they had kind of made different decisions in the edit and stuff like that. And I liked it, but I didn't love it, and I feel like that's all I can really say about that.
Fair enough. Yeah, I don't remember like anything about it, quite honestly.
They missed a golden opportunity to have Cable interact with his father, who was actually Cyclops. It would have been fucking hilarious if like a 50-year-old like Josh Brolin or whatever had to like interact with like a really young Ty Sheridan.
Yeah.
That would have been gold, and like Deadpool would eat popcorn while watching them interact.
Yeah.
It's like, this is so funny.
That would have been...
They even had Ty Sheridan in one shot, and I'm like, you fucking bastard.
They even, like, had a subplot going on with the whole X-Force, too, so...
Oh, yeah, that went
nowhere. Yeah.
And they even had, like, an X-Force song in the credits. I'm like, this is pathetic. Yeah.
It took forever for that movie to end, too. Jeez.
Anyways, moving on. Ant-Man and the Wasp.
It's good. It's great.
It's a lot of fun.
I like it more than the first one, actually.
Yeah.
I agree. Yeah, I agree. It's a very worthy sequel, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Nice. I know most people kind of wrote it off as like a whatever kind of experience, but I think they were selling it short, because whenever we watched it, I actually thought, you know what, this is actually a way better pace than the first one. Everyone has like something to do. The villain is even kind of like different, because she's not like trying to take over the world. She's not trying to destroy a city. She's just kind of trying to survive, because she has this horrible like affliction. Only Hank Pym's technology can cure. So she's in a desperate struggle to like get that technology before he does.
Yeah.
And that was different. Then
it was good to see. It was good to see Michelle Pfeiffer. I always liked her for reasons we'll get into in the DC episode. But the sort of body switch joke where Paul Rudd is like kind of impersonating her as the mom, that was great.
The funniest scene in the movie is when Lewis, Scott Lang's friend, is like given truth serum. And he has, and knowing Lewis, he goes on an incredibly long tangent over a story that just goes on so many different narrative ropes, and it's like, oh no, you unleashed the beast.
There is a meme.
We're gonna be here for years.
There is a meme going around saying that, you know, Louise from Ant-Man needs to narrate the events of 2020.
Yeah, I do. I have seen that meme, and I think, I can't believe I didn't even touch on that yet.
Yeah,
like Michael Pena, in these movies, he's so funny.
Yeah,
he's great.
Unfortunately, the next movie I want to talk about is a really low note. 2018 ended on a garbage fest called Venom.
Oh,
Lyle, you want to lead this one because you actually watched this for homework for this episode. I watched
it today for the first time,
and
I kind of like it.
Oh, that's
I like it for all the wrong reasons.
the
plot. The plot is not great. It's generic as fuck. it's kind of like all over the place tonally. Like it wants to be funny, but it also wants to be a horror film. It's directed by the same guy who made Zombieland, so you think he'd be better at balancing horror and like comedy. Nothing happens for like the first hour, and it's really boring. But like Tom Hardy, he sounds like an angry duck throughout the entire movie. Like that's how he talks. He's like, "Oh, holy shit!" He has like 3 different accents.
Yeah,
and then like Venom himself is kind of interesting because like, you know how like the one thing I didn't like about Venom in Spider-Man 3 is that he was almost like a Hulk-like creature who just screamed and yelled at things and was nearly indestructible. In this, it's like he has a bit of a relationship with Eddie Brock, which is kind of neat. And I'm not saying it's brilliant, but like it's fun watching him fun watching Tom Hardy like sometimes lose complete control of his body, and Venom has to kind of pull the strings sometimes because he doesn't want his host to die.
A friend of mine basically summed up in one hilarious quip what was wrong with this movie for me.
What's that?
He was like, Venom is the best superhero movie in the year 2003.
Patrick Williams. I remember
He's like, if it had been made 15 years prior, it would have been so good, but it just really did not lend itself well to the current superhero era.
Yeah.
And one thing that really bothered me about this movie was the whole marketing campaign was intended to kind of subvert the expectations of what we now know as superhero movies. Like the tagline of the movie was literally like, there are too many superheroes or something like that.
Yeah.
And it doesn't do that. Like, it is a pretty generic superhero movie, and he's not really an anti-hero because there's another villain established in the movie.
Yeah, there's like so many even worse.
There's like, he's like evil or Venom. It's so weird.
Yeah,
it's
Riot
like
or whatever.
It's like, I don't know why it built itself on this promise that it was going to be so different when it is, in fact, as Lyle said, a pretty generic movie.
Yeah, but I don't know. It has moments that I like, but overall, I don't think it's like anything to write home about. Yeah. Although the sequel looks promising, it's looking like they might get a certain friendly neighborhood Spider-Man in there.
I hope that happens.
As
quite
well
honestly.
as a certain member of the Daily Bugle.
I hope that happens.
Woody Harrelson's in it, so I mean, come on.
The door's wide open. Walk through.
I will watch the second one. I don't know. Like, I'll have a laugh at it. But anyways, what's next?
Captain Marvel.
Ooh.
For the 4th year in a row, some Marvel property comes out in the dead of winter months in the first part of the year and makes $1 gazillion. This movie came out International Women's Day 2019, and I thought it was average. Like, I feel like you can't, just like with Black Panther, I feel like if you have any criticisms with the movie, you don't really feel comfortable saying it without, like, you know, going,
kind of like a walking on eggshell experience.
Yes,
sometimes.
But honestly, remember how, Michael, you said that you remember how Days of Future Past, which X-Men movie was set in the 80s and did nothing with the time period?
Apocalypse.
X-Men Apocalypse set in the 80s. It does
20 minutes.
Captain Marvel is set in the 90s, and it does very little with the era. And the soundtrack, while it's good, and one song was used perfectly in its respective scene, the soundtrack was nowhere near as iconic to the tone and the pacing of the film as Guardians was.
Yeah, it was just kind of like a greatest hits album.
Yeah, but the one song they used was used perfectly.
Which one was that?
That was "Come As You Are" by Nirvana, and it's the scene where she meets Michael, you remember the scene where she meets the Supreme Intelligence, and the song that plays is the perfect song to fit the scene. It's "Come As You Are."
But then it's followed up by a horribly cheesy action scene set to No Doubt.
Well, yeah, I'm Just a Girl. And you and I were saying that if they were going to pick any iconic 90s song for that scene, it should have been maybe Smells Like Teen Spirit.
I don't know. The problem with Smells Like Teen Spirit is that it has too many, ramps. Like it starts out really intense and then it slows down for like 2 minutes, and then it picks up again and then it slows down for 2 minutes. It's not the best fight scene. If it was a short scene, maybe, but like if it's like a long, drawn-out action scene, then no, it doesn't have the energy for that.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I didn't particularly care about Captain Marvel, or for Captain Marvel.
For what it's worth,
I don't have much to say about it, really.
For what it's worth, I love Brie Larson, and I think she's a great actress.
Okay.
But yeah, the movie was okay. Like, I might watch it again when I'm in the right mood, just to see what I missed and if it gets better over time. I'm all for a sequel. Like, I haven't completely written this character or story off.
I hear the sequel is gonna have Rogue in it.
Oh,
the X-Men.
That'll be really interesting.
Yeah.
That makes
there's one thing I do want to say about Captain Marvel
Go
before
ahead,
we move on. Stan Lee cameo is perfect.
Yep.
Yeah,
not just that. This was the first movie that came out after he died, and you gotta talk about the tribute that was in the opening.
Yeah, the opening credits are all Stan Lee. He kind of replaces the familiar Marvel hero imagery, and the fact to have Stan Lee like playing Stan Lee, rehearsing his line where he plays Stan Lee in a Kevin Smith movie so perfectly 90s. And I know that Kevin Smith himself was like very touched by that. So I loved everything about that cameo.
I also forgot to mention Ben Mendelsohn's actually not bad in Captain Marvel. And Samuel Jackson is notable too.
Well, that's when they went full on with the de-aging tech.
De-aging,
and it really paid off.
You can kind of tell in his physicality that Samuel Jackson isn't as limber as he used to be.
Yeah. Well, it's 90s Samuel L. Jackson, but with the body of present-day Samuel L. Jackson.
Yeah, exactly. That's really disconnected.
Yeah.
Did you guys like that fucking cat?
That cat was weird. I'm sorry. And
it's like everyone wouldn't shut up about the cat. I'm like, maybe it's because I don't like cats, but it's like, shut up.
And do you guys remember that line in Winter Soldier where Nick Fury's talking to Cap, and it's like,
I lost my eye.
It's like
last time I trusted someone.
Oh yeah.
I thought he was alluding to an encounter with a Skrull, but
like something serious, but no, it's a cat.
Nope. It's a fucking cat.
Scratch.
But yeah, okay, so
moving on.
That movie awkwardly segues into the highest grossing film of all time, Avengers Endgame. Marvel's Return of the King. This absolutely epic film is probably a result of the greatest marketing setup and is the greatest marketing payoff in cinema history, because Infinity War captured the attention of the world in a way that shocked and rocked everyone to their core. Avengers Endgame delivers, and it raked in the dough. Yeah. And it perfectly, and just like Wolverine, it was the perfect send-off to a series that stayed with us for years. Go watch it yourself. My ramblings about it won't do it any justice. Go watch it yourself.
I absolutely agree. There's not a lot that can be said about this movie that hasn't already been said in the year and a half since it came out. Yeah. But it is such a good kind of finale to so many different storylines, and the fact that they went all in with making this kind of like 2-hour drama kind of about grief and loss and the pain of moving on and whatever, and then it becomes as it's stated within the film itself, it becomes a kind of time heist.
Yeah.
And then there's one very key moment, which Evan, I'm sure you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Oh yeah.
The movie shifts with one kind of simple line said over the radio, and that scene is like absolutely chilling and jaw-dropping and exciting, and then the last hour of the movie is just this really, really fun, resolute kind of finale. Like everything we've been wanting to see together, every character they've built up over the last 11 years. It's like, enough good things cannot be said about that finale and how they pulled it off. And I love it. I'll go back and watch it whenever.
Yep. Well, it was glad to watch it with you guys too. I mean, the other week.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I really like that. The next movie on our list, because we really do have to wrap this up. It's X-Men: Dark Phoenix. Have any of you seen this? Because I skipped it.
I have seen this movie, and I will just say, basically, just take everything I said about Avengers Endgame and invert it to make it negative.
Oh my god.
That movie in itself is, if you think about it, the X-Men franchise went through many kind of continuity changes and creative changes and stuff, but it is essentially one saga of like 19 years, from the year 2000 to the year 2019.
Yeah.
That movie is really weirdly disjointed. The actors are very clearly cashing in a paycheck. They don't want to be there.
Oh god.
The camaraderie is weird and awkward.
They don't do anything with
the action scenes are like forgettable. There is one pretty cool scene on a train, which is kind of worth checking out on its own merits, but didn't do much for me, and it does not feel like a satisfying conclusion to a saga of any kind.
Yeah. Oh god. I'm glad I skipped it, quite honestly.
Yeah, me too.
The last movie we're gonna talk about tonight came out 2 months after Endgame. Spider-Man: Far From Home. Good movie, but they picked the wrong time to release it.
Should have called it Spider-Man Far Too Soon.
Well, because it would be like can you imagine if in an alternate reality 2012 they released Iron Man 3 2 months after the Avengers? It wouldn't have been the same. I know that, I feel like if they probably had to release it at this time because of the Sony contract they have with Marvel Studios and how the character is exchanged between the two studios, but I kind of regret seeing this in the theater so soon. But you know what? It's got some good elements in it.
Sorry, go ahead.
It's got some good elements in it. Mysterio's great. The guy who almost was Spider-Man is Spider-Man's enemy.
I'll always see Mysterio as Donnie Darko 2.0.
Oh yeah.
I really like Far From Home. I think it makes good use of its European settings, and I feel like the subplots going on are very cute. I kind of like how Spider-Man's kind of primary motivator is just to impress this girl while he's trying to save the world and stuff. It's very true to the core of its character.
Yeah.
And I do like a lot that it has going on in that movie. But what's kind of interesting about what you just said, Evan, is yes, it was released very close to the release of Endgame, but it's almost kind of lucky that happened, because they wouldn't have been able to release it this year.
That's true, yeah.
So they kind of lucked out on that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I don't know. Like I said, it's almost kind of fitting that we sort of started this convo talking about Spidey and how that first iteration of it was maybe what got us into superhero stuff, but I feel 18 years on, I will always enjoy seeing a new Spider-Man film. And I feel like Marvel really figured it out, and I feel like Far From Home is yet another worthy entry that I don't know. I liked it. I go back to it sometimes, and it's a really fun movie.
Yeah. Well, let's kind of bring this on home, no pun intended, with, what's the future of Marvel Studios? Because, I really felt the MCU fatigue when I walked out of Far From Home.
Are we starting to feel superhero fatigue now?
Well, I kind of want to answer that question again when we talk about DC, because there's a point I want to prove. There are factors.
But, yeah, in terms of MCU, I always ask myself each and every time, now that Endgame is over, I have to ask, should the MCU wrap things up, or should they, maybe do one more phase? I'm wondering to myself, when should the MCU close its doors? Because I understand they make so much money doing this, and that is the driving force, sure. But, I don't know, at a point, the returns are going to diminish. People are going to lose interest after a while, and they're doing good. They've made solid work, but I'm worried that that's not going to last forever.
Well, when we were talking, I noticed a pattern when we were talking about these movies tonight. We would talk. There would be a couple of really good ones, and then they would be followed up by really bad ones. So the fatigue is understandable throughout this genre. Like over the last 18 years, we've had nonstop superhero movies year after year after year, and every time the public loses interest, a game-changing film like Infinity War or Black Panther will come along and
or even Spider-Man into the Spider-Verse.
Yeah, we forgot to talk about that. Maybe because it's not live action, but that is like the biggest love letter to Spider-Man fans and to the Spider-Man lore that I've ever seen.
That movie is fantastic still.
Yeah. So
so what I find interesting is, like I sort of alluded to earlier in the conversation, not all superhero movies are created equal by any stretch, and not all of them like even feel like they belong to the same genre. So I feel like as long as we keep kind of seeing like interesting different takes on source materials, like they will remain interesting. And I don't know, like fatigue is an argument that can be made for like anything that's like popular, but the superhero genre is just becoming so like malleable, and it can like become so many different types of movies that I'm always like really intrigued by the ones that take a sort of super creative risk and just do something entirely new for the genre.
Yeah, for sure.
It opens the doors to like a lot of ideas, and I won't go into details of what this idea is, but Michael, myself, and Lyle to a degree have been kind of like working on this story idea I have for a parody of this genre. Can't say too much more about it because we're sworn to secrecy, but
perfect amenities,
like I'm just using the downtime, like whatever downtime I can find in this COVID world where film production is like admittedly not at a complete standstill, but it's been slowed considerably. And not only that, releases have been affected tremendously too. In an alternate reality 2020, we would have been talking about Black Widow and New Mutants, but those got left off because we just haven't seen them. Honestly, Black Widow, why didn't they release that in the place of Captain Marvel instead of like great? It looks like it's going to be a great movie, but wrong, like Spider-Man: Far From Home, good movie, wrong time to release it.
Yeah.
So.
And I don't really care about this upcoming movie they have called The Eternals. I don't know what the hell that's about.
Yeah. So
they haven't even released a trailer yet.
Yeah.
It's kind of worrisome. That makes me raise an eyebrow.
Well, New Mutants had to go through
New Mutants got fucked up so hard.
Yeah.
Lord, that was delayed for like 4 years.
Yeah.
That movie has had quite the prediction.
Yeah.
And you know what? At the end of the day, it's just whatever. It's
so. I guess Michael Lake.
Yeah.
Sorry, I kind of had to have like some munchies here because I was getting hungry during the show. But thank you so much for your time. It's been an incredible trip down memory lane.
Yeah.
What I'm about to join us next week as we dive deeper into DC and how they handled their cinematic world. What I'm about to say cannot be stressed enough. Enough said.